Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Bat Around. Started a split second later because it would help if I unmuted my microphone first. I'm your host, Paul Valley. No, you are not seeing things. That is not Zack Goodman over there in the... Which way am I going? That's not Zack Goodman over there in the host chair. That is Ryan Blake, my co-host from Give That Fan a Podcast. Zack is playing in a golf tournament today, and so he will not be on the show. So I'm working the ones and twos over here today. Ryan is kindly filling in. I hate the way this camera's lined up. I don't know how Zack puts up with this. I'm just gonna sit back in the chair like this, and we're gonna rock like this.
I think you did that last time I was here as well.
Yeah, I'm not used to this camera setup, and it's weird. I don't have a ton of space over here, but we're going to press on. Today's episode of The Bat Around brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel. Come experience Maryland's #1 sportsbook this NFL season at the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel, the ultimate place for any sports enthusiast. Take advantage of our 24/7 kiosks, massive video screens, and watch all the action from the best seat in the house. With more money paid out than anyone around, make every moment more at the new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. Ryan, good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm great. You know, I left my apartment early enough to stop and get a coffee, and I think for the first time in my life, I was patient enough to not burn my tongue on the first sip. I waited, I sat back, let it kind of sit in the center console for a second, and then by the time I took a sip, it was perfect temperature, didn't burn myself. Small victories.
Small victories indeed. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
The Orioles, they made some moves, some earth-shattering moves. No, not earth-shattering moves, not by any stretch. They claimed outfielder Jake Cave from Cleveland, I believe, right?
Minnesota.
Sorry, similar colors.
I get those two mixed up all the time.
Similar colors. So they claim outfielder Jake Cave from the Minnesota Twins, and then catchers Aramis Garcia and Mark Colesberry from the Cincinnati Reds. So the Reds have no catchers left. Basically, the Orioles took them all. They DFA'd Jake Reed for the Cave move, and Bo Sulcer and Lewis Head for the Garcia and Colesberry moves. I was doing a guest spot on the Locked On Orioles podcast to talk about Ryan Mountcastle the other day. I believe you did Felix Bautista the day before me. So go check those out. Ryan did Thursday's episode. I did Friday's episode with Connor Newcomb on the Locked On Orioles podcast, reviewing Felix Bautista's season on Thursday, and Ryan did, and I reviewed Ryan Mountcastle's season on Friday. And we're going to talk about that actually here in a split second. But Connor Newcomb, when the Orioles made the Jake Cave move, he said it's basically a left-handed, better version of Ryan McKenna. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure I necessarily agree that he's a better version of McKenna, but you know, it's not a move that really moves the needle for me. Decent fielding, not great hitting outfielder. That's kind of what you have in McKenna anyways. I don't consider Cave much of an upgrade over him if he is in the running for the fourth or fifth outfielder spot, but it's not a move that excites me.
Yeah, and to me, it's just a depth move. Now, in 2018, when he was a rookie, he played in 91 games, and he had 31 extra base hits. He had 13 home runs, 16 doubles, and 2 triples. So that looks like a player, and then it's been nothing but downhill since then. So it's pretty much a depth move. Connor said that he wouldn't be surprised if the Orioles claimed him, try to pass him through waivers, and then put him in their minor league system. Now, these catchers, Aramis Garcia and Mark Colesberry, these are not earth-shattering moves by any stretch. Both of these guys are backups to backups, basically. Garcia played in 47 games this year, and it was his most extensive major league action. Both of them have gotten cups of coffee. Colesberry was a 27-year-old rookie this year. He debuted in April and got 10 whole games under his belt. So this is more catching depth for the Orioles. Does that signify any corresponding moves as far as maybe they have Ben Boom or Nottingham coming up to take over as a backup on the major league roster, or Gallagher? I can't remember Gallagher's first name, but
Cam. Yeah, no, it's to me, it's just a matter of, doing their due diligence to figure out who's going to be the backup for Adley next year. Chirinos is a free agent. Ben Boom will be in the system unless he's non-tendered. I believe the same goes for Nottingham, although he's not on the 40. I'm not 100% sure how that works. But, with those guys, Cam Gallagher was just added to the 40. You got these 2 waiver claims. They're on the 40-man. They're not all going to make it to spring training, but I think this signifies that they're really going to pull out all the stops to make sure they find the right guy to be the backstop, because Chirinos this year was not the answer. And that's part of the problem with these so-called punt lineups is it's a lot less glaring when you have a serviceable backup catcher. And Chirinos was not that offensively or defensively, so they need to find the right guy to fill that slot.
Well, yeah, and with Robinson Chirinos, at the beginning of the year before Adley got here, we were okay with it because the pitchers seemed to be pitching better, and he had that veteran presence. And so you're like, all right, Chirinos is a veteran guy. He's got postseason experience. He can show these guys, what it takes to play day in and day out and be a winning type of team. Then Rutschman got here, and Chirinos' deficiencies became glaring. And let's be fair here. A lot of catchers' deficiencies would become clear with Adley Rutschman being the everyday catcher.
Yes.
Adley Rutschman as a rookie, a 5.2 WAR, tied for the highest of all time by any rookie, and he only played in 121 games, or I think 119 games, something like that.
113.
113. So, and he was phenomenal. People talking about him as the best catcher in baseball already. I think people forget that JT Realmuto still exists.
Yeah, that dude is unbelievable.
20 steals and 20 home runs at 32 years old for the Phillies. Adley Rutschman's a very good player. He may be the best catcher in baseball, but let's give credit where credit's due. JT Realmuto is a freaking stud, and he still exists in the world today. I'm going to get a lot of hate over that. Somebody's going to come at me.
Realmuto is a stud.
Yeah, but somebody's going to be like, how can you say that about Adley? Adley's freaking phenomenal, and I have no doubts that he's going to be an all-star and an MVP candidate multiple times.
Absolutely.
So, these
you're supposed to put on your orange sunglasses, right?
Oh, dude, the crazy thing is, a lot of people think I'm just super negative. One person said to me, how are you going to survive without being able to bitch about a lineup for the next 6 months? And it's like, dude, you have no idea how much, and this, I went on a rant about this at the end of the show last week, so I won't do that again, but you have no idea how much I love this team. I literally bleed orange. Seriously, if you cut me open, orange is going to come out. It's absurd, despite the fact I'm wearing all purple, wearing my Ravens gear today.
Yeah.
My entire life, I wore those orange sunglasses and sipped the orange Kool-Aid. From 1998 through 2011, every year I told myself, this is the year that the Orioles are going to get back to the postseason. And they'd win 64 games, and it's like, ugh. I remember 2002. It was a summer between my senior year of high school and my freshman year of college. And I remember I was on vacation, and the last day of my vacation, the Orioles won a baseball game to get to 63-63. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, they're 500. What a year. They went 4-32 the rest of the way. There was a 12-game losing streak and an 8-game losing streak in there. It was absolutely horrendous. And yet every year I convinced myself that was the team that was going to make it. And then it's funny because I've gone back and I've looked at those lineups, and it's like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Well, and maybe that's why I'm so negative about things now. And it's not that I'm negative. It's that I want better. You and I have talked about this on our other show, Give That Fan a Podcast, shameless plug, about how it's not we're not trying to be negative, we're not trying to be hateful or overly critical. It's just that when you finally have a winning team with you again, in front of you again, you want them to do everything they can do to get to the postseason. So when they aren't doing those things, when they're falling a little bit short in areas where you think that they could have put their best foot forward and didn't, you get upset. And hopefully this was the last season of that. And then next year and the years following, all the talent that they have, there won't be such thing as a punt lineup, because their punt lineup will still be a lineup that's able to compete day in and day out.
Right, and when you look at the last several seasons of losing 100 games apiece, 83-79 is a significant improvement.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
But that's not good enough. It's good enough when you look at the track record of the Orioles the last few years. This is a huge step in the right direction, and it's great. It's awesome. But it's still not good enough.
It's not good enough. And because when you're a winning ball club, if you go 83-79, you can pinpoint certain points in the season that prevented you from winning those extra 7 games to get to the postseason. You had 2 against they honestly should have swept 4 games from the Astros. They should have won that 11-10 loss. That's how they were up 5-2 after 5. They were up 9-7 in the ninth inning. Yeah. And then the next day, they had the winning run on third base with 1 out in the bottom of the 10th inning, and they had a strikeout and a ground out to end the game, and then they lost in 11. So it was, or to end the inning, and then they lost in 11. Those are 2 wins right there. And you and I'm going to bring this up on Give That Fan a Podcast when we record next week. I talked about this last week on this show, so I'm not going to do it again. Tampa Bay opened the gate for the Orioles to walk into the postseason, stepped aside, and tried to usher them through. They lost 12 of their last 16 games. They lost 5 straight to end the year, and they only won. Of those 4 wins in their last 16, only 1 of them came on a day when the Orioles lost to end the year. And the Orioles, I figured it out that if they had won the games they were supposed to win, the Orioles would have finished the year a game and a half up on Tampa Bay and in the postseason. So we're going to talk about that on Give That Fan a Podcast next week, so stay tuned for that, because I already talked about it on the show last week. Now, speaking of Tampa Bay, had to be the worst Tampa Bay roster that we've seen make the playoffs in a long time. They go into that series against Cleveland, and they're crawling. They backed into the postseason, lost 5 straight to end the year, and then they get swept by Cleveland. The 2 teams combined to score 4 runs in that series. The first game, Tampa Bay gets a solo shot from Jose Siri in, I believe it was the top of the 5th. And then in the bottom of the 5th, Cleveland's own Jose Ramirez hits a 2-run shot, 2-1 Cleveland. That's the final score, 2-1. Then they play the next day, and it becomes the first postseason game in Major League history to go 13 innings scoreless. Cleveland ends up walking it off. Who hit the walk-off home run? Was that Rosario?
Bottom 15th, Oscar Gonzalez.
Bottom of the 15th, hits the walk-off home run. Cleveland wins 1-0. They advance to the ALDS. They are playing the Yankees. They come out yesterday, and they get a 4-2 victory. Hard fall. So the Yankees kind of owned them the first game. They won that game, I believe it was 4-1. And Cleveland, they you could tell they weren't going to muster anything. Not against Garrett Cole, right? And then Nestor Cortez, who may have been their best pitcher, the Yankees' best pitcher all year, made a couple mistakes there, I believe in the 5th inning. They gave up the home run to Rosario to tie the game. The Yankees were up in that game 2-0 after a Giancarlo Stanton home run in the first inning, and then didn't score again. The Cleveland shut them out. But you could tell with Cleveland that they were kind of scratching and clawing to get back in that game and tie it up, and then push across a couple of runs late to win that game 4-2 and tie the series up. Does Cleveland have a shot here? Their pitching is phenomenal, but outside of Jose Ramirez and maybe Josh Naylor, that lineup leaves. And I mean, Stephen Kwan's a singles hitter. Naylor, he's like a 250 hitter with some pop, but he's a good vibes guy, right? We know all about the good vibes guys here in Baltimore. Oscar Gonzalez is a good player, but they have Miles Straw, who playing every day because of his defense and his speed. 21-22 in stolen bases, but I think it was like a 592 OPS this year. Really poor offensive player, and he's an everyday player for them. Does Cleveland have a shot to take down the Yankees because of their pitching?
I mean, good pitching can take you a long way in the postseason, but you have to be able to hit. Mm-hmm. And Cleveland has not shown me that they are capable of, stringing together a few games, even a few games of really good offense. Now, don't overlook, I think it was Ahmed Rosario. I'm trying to pull up. Of course, Fangraphs is trying to get me to become a member.
He had a nice year. He had I think he hit above 270 with 11 home runs, 11 or 12 home runs this year.
Sorry, I'm Andres Jimenez. He had a 6.1 F4. That's 0.1 behind Jose Ramirez. So he was another guy in that infield who had a really, really good season. But, they just haven't been able to put it together. And playing against the Yankees, I mean, look, the Yankees' offense leaves much to be desired as well. Mm-hmm. If you look outside of Aaron Judge, and even he is, I think, 0 for 7 or 0 for 8 now with 7 strikeouts.
Yep.
Grounded out in his last at bat to go 0 for 5 with 4 Ks yesterday.
Golden sombrero.
Yeah. Almost the platinum. I was hoping he'd get that 5th. But the boos came down for him too.
How do you boo that man? I heard him, and it's crazy, man, because we are a victim of circumstance, right? We're baseball fans, sports fans in general. You very much live in the moment, right? And in that moment, you convince yourself that moment is a predictor of what's going to happen in the future, right? So you have your fans sitting there. Forget the fact that Judge hit 311. Forget that he hit 62 home runs. Forget that he drove in about 140. You're 0 for 7 with 7 strikeouts. Boo.
Yeah.
What the hell, man?
If I'm Judge, I'm like, I hear that, and I'm out of New York. I'm done.
And signing with Baltimore, so I can face him 14 times next year.
Yep.
Yeah, I wish. Continue.
Go back there and keep getting booed. No, sorry, I didn't mean to get off topic with Cleveland. You know, I don't really, you know, if they can, I mean, it's a 1-1 series. Yeah. So
they got Tristan McKenzie going today.
They have McKenzie going today. Severino for the Yankees, who has not been great in his postseason career.
Mm-hmm. And he's barely pitched in 3 years.
Yeah. So, and you know, to be fair, he's back. He's healthy. He finally looks like himself again, which is great. You know, great enough.
Great for him.
Great for him. But you know, if they can somehow take Game 3, I mean, we've seen it before. Anything can happen in the postseason. Mm-hmm. Cleveland certainly has the pitching to go far. They have an outstanding bullpen. Their starting rotation is spectacular, but they're going to have to figure out a way to put a few runs on the board on a continuous basis if they want to make a deep run.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, what's his name? What's their name? Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
They've done this thing since 2008 where they trade their good players because they have such a loaded farm system, and they always have great pitching. Their pitching development is phenomenal, and they're just player development is phenomenal. And so even though they trade away all their good players, they stay relevant. They stay in the postseason. This year, that didn't work out for them. Wander Franco spent most of the year on the IL. Kevin Kiermaier ended the season on the IL. So did who's their catcher?
Zunino?
Zunino spent most of the year on the IL. Randy Arozarena seemed to have taken a step back this year.
I saw a report, and this goes with your point. I saw a report the other day that the Rays are considering moving Arozarena in a trade.
Well,
I don't know how reputable that is, but it's something I saw, and it makes sense because that's what the Rays have done for the last decade.
Right, and they seem to, but this year it didn't work for them.
Right.
And last year they got into the postseason, and they were ousted in the division series by the Red Sox, who we were pretty sure were the inferior club, right? Is the league kind of starting to catch up with Tampa Bay? Because Tampa Bay always seemed to be a step ahead. They were the first ones to incorporate openers and the idea of trading away your star players, almost like a college format where you have a guy for 4 years, he's gone, you bring in the next guy who's going to be the star for 4 years until he's gone. Is that a way that you think that it's been sustainable for 15 seasons now, but are they going to be able to continue to do that, or is the rest of the league catching up and saying, not so fast?
I don't necessarily think Tampa's going to go away. They still have a really good young core. Wander Franco is going to be a stud. Their starting rotation is going to be really good for a while, especially if guys like Tyler Glasnow can stay healthy.
And they did lock up Wander Franco to an 11-year deal prior this past offseason.
They did. They're going to have Shane McClanahan, Shane Baz in the starting rotation. They're going to be a good team. They're going to continue to be a good team. But, yeah, I think the league is catching up to them. And I look back at, FanFest in 2019, the year, I guess, a couple months after Mike Elias and Sig Mejdal were hired. They were doing the Q&A at FanFest up on the stage, and a fan asked Sig how he was going to help the Orioles get ahead of the curve in terms of analytics. And he said, well, before we even consider trying to get ahead of the curve, we have to catch up with the rest of the league. Mm-hmm. And Tampa was one of the frontrunners in analytics for a long time. And I think as other teams are starting to, I shouldn't say starting because it's been going on, but yeah, I think other teams have caught up and have figured out the right process to build sustainable success. And Tampa's got to have an offense if they want to keep up. Mm-hmm. It's great to have nasty pitchers on your team, but you got to be able to continue to compete. And especially if the Orioles start to make a run at the postseason on a regular basis moving forward, it's going to be tough for Tampa to stick around unless they can get a legitimate offense.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Now, look, a lot of guys were hurt. They had more guys on the IL this year than any other team in the league. Yeah. Brandon Lau is a big-time power hitter for them, and he spent the last part of the year on the IL, and that probably hurt them as well.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that this is the team in 2021 that led the majors in runs scored. So they have the guys that can put the bat on the ball. Hesop Choi, is that his name?
G-Man.
G-Man Choi.
Yeah.
Who's Hesop?
Hesop, I think, was he a Padre in like the mid-2000s?
Maybe.
I know his name from baseball cards.
Yeah, well, Choi to me is a guy who every time I see him in the lineup, I'm like, really? He gets on base. He plays okay defense at first base. I feel like they need a guy to play first base, and they've done this. They've never had that big-time first baseman. It was James Loney before it was Choi, who was a 300 hitter, but he hit like 10 home runs a year. You need that big bopper to play first base for you, in my opinion. I don't feel like you can have the offensive profile of Ji-Man Choi and have him be your everyday first baseman. Now, moving on to the Yankees, I don't want to take a survey. The MLB app was asking me to take a survey. So the Yankees, they got off to the hottest of hot starts this year. And it looked like people were talking about how they might set the record for best record of all time.
Yeah.
And then they fell apart after the All-Star break. Didn't even win 100 games this year. Oh, they won 99. They suck.
It made me so happy. Seeing them lose 162.
Yeah, it was. You come back to the mean, right? You always are who you are at the end of the year, right? You become who you are. And I looked at the Yankees roster today, and I had this season, I had them finishing, I believe, second or third in the division because I thought the Blue Jays were far and away better. I thought the Rays pitching was going to make them better. I didn't believe that the Yankees had the pitching or the lineup depth to keep them in it. And Derpy Gaming, I don't know who this is, but he's commenting on the show, says the Yankees are overrated. You shut down Judge and Stanton. What are they? The Yankees have no bullpen depth, and yesterday showed that. And then he said Joey Gallo curse.
Well, their whole bullpen is hurt.
Yeah, the bullpen's
I want to cut them a little bit of slack there.
But the lineup, they don't have LeMahieu for the division series. Judge is 0 for 8 with 7 strikeouts. Stanton hit the 2-run homer, but Stanton is a shell of who he used to be. He'll still hit a 120-mile-an-hour home run and hit 30 to 40 home runs for you, but that average is below 240.
Yeah.
At this point, and they're both going to strike out close to 200 times. They have a lineup of beer league softball guys. One was Judge. Is Judge feeling the pressure now after hitting the 62? Because he hit 61. And then it took him like 8 games or 9 games to hit 62. It took him a while, right? And after he hit 60, it took him a while to get to 61. Is he feeling the pressure, or is it kind of, okay, I can stop pressing so much, and now he's humanizing because he already hit the feet, and now it's like, oh wait, he's a human being. He's not superhuman, although he looks at 6'7", 280 of solid muscle. Yeah. He's a human being. Is it more of him being human, or is it feeling some pressure?
I think it's more him being human. You know, the slate is wiped clean when you enter the postseason. There's no chance for him to add on to his home run total or his RBI total. He's no longer competing for a Triple Crown. He's trying to win a World Series. And, you know, players go through slumps. It happens. Look at Kyle Schwarber and Rhys Hoskins. They're hitting 1 and 2 in the Phillies lineup, and I think they have like 3 combined hits, or did coming into yesterday's game when Hoskins hit the 3-run homer. I think it's just a matter of, you know, he's not himself right now, and I think that's the human aspect of baseball. You know, you go through slumps, players strike out, it gets in their head. He's hearing boos from his home fans after setting the American League home run record. It's, you know, I don't think it's pressure anymore just because of the fact that he's no longer, you know, there's no more home run chase. Like I said, he's trying to win a World Series now. Regular season stats are out the window. I think he's just struggling to see the ball. I think during the home run chase, opposing teams figured out how to pitch to him, how to be effective against him, and the Guardians are continuing to do that in the postseason. And so far, it has worked, and it's kept him out of games. It's helped the Guardians win games, and you know, I think that's what it is. I think it's just a slump, and he's going to have a big hit at some point.
Yeah, I expect him to hit the walk-off home run in extra innings.
Probably
yesterday.
Yeah.
I fully expected.
He's going to have his Yankees postseason moment this year.
He might only have a couple more games to try and do it.
God willing.
And I think it's an interesting point that you brought up earlier when you said that he may be gone. He is a free agent. The Yankees offered him a $30+ million a year deal that he turned down, and then he goes out and puts up historically one of the greatest seasons of all time. Right? He was a 10-11 win player. He was almost an 11 win player this year.
Yeah.
And he does all of that and gets booed at home the second he starts to falter.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a guy that says, why do I want to put up with that? I can go any place else, be the centerpiece of a team, put up the same numbers, and lead that team to the postseason and not have to deal with my home fans booing me. Because I don't think he gets booed anywhere else. I don't think he gets booed anywhere else for the start that he's had to this postseason. And that doesn't mean I think he's coming to Baltimore. I know that that's been my pipe dream since July, but since June, since my whole life. But he's from the Bay Area. He's from California, and I heard the Giants are going to make a strong push for him.
Yeah.
But maybe he says, you know what? I might be the missing piece in San Francisco, and I don't need this crap. It's an interesting thing to think about, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens once the World Series ends, and hopefully he's not celebrating, and where he's going to end up. Now we got to do this quick because we're running a little bit behind here. But Phillies playing with house money. They kind of backed into the playoffs themselves. They had to hold off a run by the Brewers. I feel like the Brewers do this every year. They start off really good. They have a really bad month or two to take themselves almost out of the postseason picture, and then they come on strong at the end, and they just miss it by a hair to get in. I believe they finished the game back.
Yeah, I wanted the Brewers to make it so bad. I don't know if it's because I love their color scheme, their logo, or if it's I have Corbin Burns and Brandon Woodruff and those guys on my fantasy team, and I love watching them pitch. They're nasty, but I was hoping to see the Brewers, but now you got the Phillies who have a two games to one lead on the defending champions.
On defending champions, and I have no interest in the Brewers ever being in the playoffs until they get an offense that's at least interesting.
That's fair.
Their offense is terrible. They win because they have great pitching. And for Cleveland was expected to finish dead last. Every year, they pick the Brewers to do something because they always do, but they never hit. They never. Andrew McCutchen's a centerpiece of that offense, and he hasn't been an effective player, in my opinion, in 4 years. Yeah.
It'd be helpful if Christian Yelich didn't fall off a cliff after his MVP season.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, don't sleep on guys like Willie Adames, Rowdy Tellez. Like they've got some boppers in that lineup.
They're good players. They're not great. They don't hit for high average. They don't get on base a ton, but they're vibe guys who have power. Right. The Phillies, they get in. They're up 2-0?
2-1.
2-1 on the Braves, who won 101 games this year. The defending World Series champions. Bryce Harper. He hit that home run in the second game of the wild card round, and he's taken off since then. 2 more hits last night, including a home run, 3 RBIs. Bryce Harper's back, in my opinion. Castellanos is swinging a better bat, I think, in this postseason so far. Schwarber batting .056, but that dude hit 46 home runs. He can go on a tear at any point.
Yeah.
And Rhys Hoskins only hitting .095, but he got that monkey off his back with that big 3-run homer yesterday. And they have solid pitching. Between Nola, between Wheeler, they have guys that they can send out there and help you. And Syndergaard, who's been underrated in my opinion.
Even Ranger Suarez.
They can go out there and they can win a ball game.
Yeah.
And the Braves, they may not play beyond today. And that's going to be very interesting to watch. And then quickly, are the Padres fun again?
Yeah, man.
Fernando Tatis isn't there, but Manny carried that team. Manny is going to be probably top 2, 3 for MVP this year.
If he doesn't win.
And the argument can be made that he was more valuable to his team than Goldschmidt was to his team because they also had Nolan Arenado and the pitching. So, although the Padres had great pitching too. The Padres, I think they're fun again. And these series with the Dodgers, and now that they're up 2-1 on the Dodgers, it's so much fun. It's probably the series to watch right now.
Yeah.
Because the Dodgers won 111 games this year. They have an entire roster filled with all-stars. And if they don't get out of the division series, they're going to win today. You know the Dodgers are going to come up and they're going to come out and they're going to do something like put up 6 runs in the first inning and they're going to win today like 12-2.
Nah, I don't think so.
Well, the Padres got Musgrove going,
I think
right?
the Padres end the series tonight.
You think so?
Yeah.
I'm hoping so. And the thing is, I've never been a Dodgers hater. I've always been kind of like a low key Dodgers fan. But they've been to the They went to the World Series 3 times in 4 years.
Yeah.
And they win 100 games every year. I'm kind of tired of seeing them.
Yeah.
Give me a break. Between either the Astros or the Dodgers have played in every World Series since 2017. I'm ready for 2 new teams.
Same here.
I'm ready for 2 new teams.
Absolutely.
With that in mind, I need you to do me a favor.
Yeah.
And can you read this live read for me while I get Stan on the line? The word is path to stardom. It says Parth. It's said Parth for 2 months, and they've never corrected it, but it's path to stardom.
All right, let's see if I remember how to read. These are the final days to pick up this print issue of PressBox. I guess that's this one. On the cover, Bo Smolka profiles Ravens tight end Mark Andrews' path to NFL stardom. From his late decision to play the sport full-time through having to overcome type 1 diabetes and more. Also inside, we introduce you to football players at Maryland, Navy, Towson, and Morgan as the season gets underway, and everything you need to know for betting football this season. PressBox is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farms stores, and you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the Orioles, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com. Coming on Wednesday, an all-new print issue of PressBox featuring new Maryland basketball coach Kevin Willard on the cover. I guess I didn't remember how to read, and I screwed up Parth, even though you told me about it.
That's all right. I had to get used to it because it said Parth for 2 months.
I said path, and then I saw the word, and then I said Parth, even though you just warned me that it says Parth. It's supposed to be path. Whatever.
It threw you. It's all right. It's all right. Joining us now on the line for his weekly segment, we have Stan the Fans Hurl. Stan, good morning. It's Paul and Ryan, not Zach. How are you today?
Good. How you guys doing?
We're doing well, enjoying an exciting postseason. And Stan, I don't know about you. This has been, for me, a really exciting postseason. There's reason to like every team, in my opinion, except for the Yankees, that's in the postseason right now. Has this been a wildly entertaining one for you as well?
Yeah, it's been very entertaining. Whenever you have, Luke and I were joking about it last night. I did not write a preview for this round of the playoffs. I would have been on the verge of elimination in probably all the series except Seattle-Houston.
Yeah, it's definitely been fun. A lot of drama. You mentioned Seattle. They came back from that 8-1 deficit to sweep the Blue Jays. The Phillies are playing with house money. The Padres are fun again. It's certainly been a fun postseason to start. Now, before we get into that, Stan, the Orioles made a few roster moves over the past week. They claimed outfielder Jake Cave off waivers from the Minnesota Twins, and they DFA'd right-handed relief pitcher Jake Reed to make room for him. 31 extra base hits for Cave in 91 games in his 2018 rookie season. Hasn't been able to duplicate that since. Connor Newcomb of the Locked on Orioles podcast likened him to a left-handed, better version of Ryan McKenna. Do you have any thoughts on the acquisition of Jake Cave?
Jake Cave has been on my fantasy team a couple times over the last few years, including the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks of this year. He's a little bit of a disappointment, but at one time he was a very thought of prospect in the Twins organization. I think he actually might have come to the Twins from the Yankees, but at one time he was a pretty high-level prospect. Those days are behind him. Doesn't mean he couldn't be. They must have a vision for what he might be able to bring to the table.
Right turn.
I imagine he's a depth piece for them moving forward. I don't know that maybe he becomes that fourth outfielder. Maybe they didn't like what they had from McKenna, or in my opinion, though, it's more so that he's going to be a depth piece. He is a left-handed bat, and they do like left-handed bats with the new dimensions in that ballpark. So we'll see if he gets some time on the Major League roster. Now, the Orioles also claimed catchers Aramis Garcia and Mark Colesbury from the Reds. They DFA'd relief pitchers Lewis Head and Bo Solster to make room. Garcia played in a career-high 47 games in 2022. Colesbury 10 games as a 27-year-old rookie in 2022. Now, those, to me, scream depth moves. These aren't guys who you think are going to be in the running for a backup catcher, are they?
No, it doesn't look that way to me unless they really see something that I'm not seeing. I took the time to look up their sort of mind.
Did we lose you?
What was interesting yesterday.
Stan, you have a bad connection. We're kind of. I know you're in the car. We're you're breaking in and out.
Yeah, okay. Well, can you hear me now?
Yes, I got you now.
Okay. What was interesting yesterday is the Reds ended up losing 3 catchers.
Wow.
The 2 that the Orioles took and the Tigers took another one. So they lost 3 depth pieces from their organization, which was kind of interesting. And that was kind of, to be honest with you, the most interesting thing about those moves was looking at how the Reds could lose 3 catchers in one day, because they weren't particularly interesting to me.
Yeah, that's and that's on them to if you waive 3 catchers. Now I don't know what their catching depth is like in their system. Maybe they have a ton of them. But losing 3 catchers and losing 3 players from any one position in the same day, to me, is kind of it's an interesting and weird thing. Now, Stan,
it's a weird coincidence.
Yeah,
that's
all.
Yeah.
So, Stan, let's move to the postseason. In Tampa Bay, they got swept by the Guardians in the wild card round. They lost 7 straight to end their season and 14 of 18 between the regular and postseason. Stan, they seem to be the worst team in the playoffs after backing in. They have young stars like Wander Franco, Randy Arozarena, Shane McClanahan, Tyler Glasnow, and Drew Rasmussen, along with Shane Baz. Despite that, is baseball kind of catching up with Tampa Bay? We know that they kind of started the whole opener thing, and they're big on bringing up these star players and then trading them before they reach arbitration, and then continuing to do this. Is that run coming to an end? Because I feel like they've gotten worse each of the last 2 seasons.
Well, they were really hurt with the injury back in 2021 to Tyler Glasnow. I mean, there aren't many organizations that lose a pitcher like that, and now they've lost Shane Baz, won't be around most likely all of next year, I think. He had Tommy John surgery as well. So, and Wander Franco, while I'm not sitting here saying he's a flop, he certainly hasn't been the sort of the star that you thought he was going to be, out of the chute. They just had the smell to me of a JV team, against the varsity for much of this season to me. I didn't fear them the way I have in past years, and I don't know if they've caught on to them or whether they had injuries or made some bad decisions, but it just didn't seem like it.
Yeah, they did have a ton of guys on the IL. Wander Franco spent a good bulk of the season on the IL. Kevin Kiermaier missed most of the year. So did Mike Zunino, and I know you love Zunino. Glasnow only came back, I think, the last couple of weeks of the season. They have an opportunity to bounce back. I'm with you. Wander Franco has all the makings of being a star player, but he's got to do it first, and he hasn't been what they built him up to be to this point. Now, the injury has a lot to do with that. I'm interested to see what he does over a full 162 if that happens next season. But
they also lost Lau, and I'll tell you what player was quietly not as effective as G-Man Choi. He just wasn't producing the way he has the past couple of years.
I said that to Ryan in the intro to the show today. I told him, I was like, I don't see how you can have G-Man Choi be your everyday first baseman and expect to field a competitive lineup. I mean, he gets on base. He plays okay defense, I guess, at first base. But to me, that's a guy who is never going to be more than basically a 260 hitter that's going to hit 10 to 15 home runs. I would like to – I don't want to see them do it, but if I'm a Rays fan, I'd like to see them go out and actually get a bopper at first base. So we'll see what they do in the offseason and see if they try to get back. Cleveland and the Yankees, they're tied 1-1 in their series. The Guardians don't have the offensive firepower of any of the other teams in the postseason right now, but they have incredible pitching. They're the youngest roster in baseball. You and I talked about this last week. Rumors of their demise were greatly exaggerated. Stan, can they keep pace offensively and pitch well enough to take down the Yankees in this round, or was that win yesterday basically their last breath?
As I said last week, they were kind of my sleeper team. I mean, I would be positively shocked if somehow they're playing in the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
But they've got arguably as good a manager as anybody, that's currently managing right now. And if the games are close, they seem to have an advantage. I mean, that was amazing yesterday that the Yankees in a what was it, a 1-1 or 2-2 game, 2-2, that James Tyon had to come on. That is not a guy that has much experience as a reliever, knowing how to warm up and just the mental aspects of the game being on the line when he comes in. And it was like a total mismatch late in the game to me,
Yeah, and the Yankees bullpen is devastated with injuries, whether it's Zach Britton, who's been ineffective, or Aroldis Chapman. They just don't have the guys in that bullpen right now. And if one of your starting pitchers falters, you're in a little bit of trouble. And it certainly doesn't help them that they scored 2 runs on a 2-run homer from Stanton yesterday in the first inning and then got nothing over the next 9 innings. And Judge 0 for 8 with 7 strikeouts. The Yankees, Stan, when you look at them, they're a flawed team for sure. They got off to that incredibly hot start and then kind of faltered down the stretch. Didn't even win 100 games this year after they were on pace to break the previous best record of all time record. Do you believe in them as a World Series contender? They haven't even been to one since 2009, which is insane when you think about the fact that it's the New York Yankees.
No, as the season wore on, they just became less and less impressive to me. That and the real issue is that lineup of theirs. It's nowhere near what it seemed to be like when the good times were rolling and they were 60 and 20 or whatever they were at that time. But they've been a very pedestrian offense for a long time right now. I still think they'll probably get by Cleveland, but it's not the biggest shock in the world if they would lose to Cleveland, to me.
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland can pitch with the best of them, so we'll see how that plays out. Now, the Blue Jays blow an 8-1 lead in Game 2 of the Wild Card Series against Seattle. They lose that game 10-9. They get swept. This after missing the playoffs despite 91 wins in 2021. This was mine and a lot of people's pick to represent the American League in the World Series this year. Stan, I think they're the most underachieving team in baseball. What's going on in Toronto that they can't seem to put it all together despite having an incredibly talented roster?
Well, to me, their most dynamic player. Look, Bo Bichette's a great player. Don't get me wrong. But I don't think he's quite as dynamic as George Springer is. And they got George Springer on a big contract, and he's not able to go to the post enough. To me, they're a vastly different team when he's either in the lineup or in center field. And they may have to transition him to being just a DH because they need that bat in that lineup,
Yeah, two seasons there, and he hasn't been able to stay on the field.
Yeah, I thought that the hiring with Dusty Baker and Buck Showalter out there, the hiring of Charlie Montoya, who I'm sure is a very nice guy and a very solid baseball man, the way Cal Ripken Sr. was a solid baseball man, does not a manager or leader make. And I just think he was miscast. Now, you're asking me what's wrong with them now. They were managed the last 80 games by this guy Schneider, who will most likely end up their manager. He's managed a lot of these players through the minor leagues, the Bo Bichettes and the Biggio and the like, and the catchers that are also young. But they've got a ways to go. Their pitching staff, they made a big move, bold move last year, getting Berrios from the Twins, and that move has not panned out. They spent big money getting Ryu. That didn't pan out because of injury. Berrios didn't pan out because of ineffectiveness. So now they've got Manoah and Gosman, and I don't see a lot there, pitching-wise. So they've got to go back to the drawing board a little bit, to me.
Yeah, they've got to figure out something. I agree with you that they probably need to move Springer to that DH role, because if he can't stay on the field, he can't help them, and they're giving him a ton of money. And Barrios, he was excellent against the Orioles this year and just bad against everybody else. I think you probably noticed that too. Now, the team that beat them, Seattle, Seattle won 14 games in a row at one point this year and then immediately lost 5 straight to the Houston Astros after that 14-game winning streak. That seems to be Seattle's kryptonite, is the Astros. And the Astros, sure enough, Seattle's leading late in both games, and Yordan Alvarez becomes Yordan Alvarez and hits 2 big-time home runs to push the Astros into the lead and give them the wins. They're up 2-0 on the Mariners. How do they eventually leapfrog their older brother in this division? Because much like the Yankees, it seems like they can beat anybody else, but the Astros, they just can't get past them.
Well, it's pretty interesting to me. They there's so much being written about the whole thing with Robbie Ray. Should they have brought Robbie Ray in? To me, if you know you're going to be playing the Astros, how did you not do a better job at getting a left-handed pitcher?
Right.
A relief pitcher to be ready. They've had the whole season to kind of work on that, and they didn't. So to me, I should them.
Yeah, it's the Astros are a really good team. They won 106 games this year. It's the second most wins in franchise history. Now, they and the Dodgers have represented at least half of the World Series teams in each of the last 5 seasons, from 2017 through 2021. You've seen either the Astros or the Dodgers in the World Series. Stan, is it time to see 2 new teams? Finally, are you ready to see 2 new teams play for the World Series this year?
I'm really don't think that way. I'm not bored by whatever I see. So, I think the Dodgers and Astros would still be the best World Series right now. Bob Melvin has got things going really well in San Diego right now. They're a very dangerous team. I don't see the Phillies having the pitching to go that extra mile.
Yeah. The Phillies are playing with house money, though, Stan. I mean, they kind of backed into the playoffs. They had to fend off a late surge from the Brewers to end the year to get in.
I apologize, Paul. I apologize. I'm getting out to the Maryland 5-star, and I got to handle parking right now. I apologize.
No worries. All right. Well, we'll talk to you next week. Enjoy yourself. All right.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Right.
That was Stan the Fan Charles back for his weekly segment. He did ask me to keep it to 15 to 17 minutes, and so I was trying to get to the end of the questioning there with him.
I always feel bad when we have Stan on, because I kind of let you just run with the interview, and I just kind of sit here. I don't want Stan to feel like I don't want to talk to him or anything like that.
Zach does the same thing. Zach might ask one question every couple of weeks, but Zach, for the most part, just kind of has me handle the interviews. He didn't used to be that way. I don't know. I just always have so much to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But and you know what? To that point, Stan always has so much to say, and that's why Stan has multiple shows every week. He has 2 great shows, actually, for you every week, and that's every Monday night with Stan and former Orioles pitcher Ross Grimsley as they visit with a different guest from the world of baseball. And every Thursday night, Stan and Gary Stein chat with a different newsmaker from the world of sports. This week, Stan and Ross were joined by the legendary Ken Singleton, plus Stan previewed this weekend's Maryland 5-star, which he was just finding parking for. I was actually going to have him do our 5-star read, but he had to jump off the line. So he previewed this weekend's Maryland 5-star with world-class writer Lillian Hurd. You can find these shows under the videos tab at facebook.com/PressBoxSports or at PressBoxOnline.com/video. Stan and Ross are back on Monday for another great show. Guests to be announced, so stay tuned for that. Speaking of the Maryland 5-star, today's show is brought to you by the Maryland 5-star. You can see Olympic athletes in action as the nation's best horses and riders compete in one of the world's premier equestrian events at the Mars Maryland 5-Star at Fairhill, presented by Brown Advisory. Today and tomorrow in Cecil County. You can find out more at maryland5star.us. So here's what we're going to do. I was anticipating Stan going until about 10:55, and he had to get off early today. So what we're going to do is we are going to hit our first break. When we come back, we'll do Sounding Off with Zack Goodman featuring Ryan Blake.
I love that.
And then after that, Luke Jackson will be in studio, PressBox's editor-in-chief. He will be in studio for a baseball roundtable for the entire 11 o'clock hour. I am really looking forward to that because I ran into Luke at the Orioles game, the last game of the year, and we talked for 20 minutes. I felt so bad for my friend who's just kind of standing there waiting for us to finish our conversation. It's just two baseball heads just going off about what they think the Orioles are going to do this offseason. So a lot of interesting stuff. Wanted to put them on the show, so we're going to do that in the next hour today. But first, our first break here. We'll be back next on the Bet Around.
Glory Days Grill's Oktoberfest menu is now running. It's one of their most popular seasonal menus all year. It features the chicken schnitzel, the Oktoberfest brewer's platter, the brewer's sausage sandwich, the Bavarian burger with a pretzel bun, the cheddar ale soup, the slam dunk pretzels, and the apple cobbler. All of these meals pair well with Oktoberfest beers and Angry Orchard on draft. Dine in or order online at glorydaysgrill.com and pick up your favorites to take home. Glory Days Grill, great food, good sports.
What's up, everyone? This is Tyus Bowser, and I'm excited to tell you that I'm back for Season 2 of the Tyus Bowser Show in partnership with PressBox and Great H Memorabilia. Join us on Tuesday nights throughout the season as I'll be heading all over town with my special guests. And of course, our co-hosts, Glenn and Rita. Or is it Rita and Glenn? What is it? I look forward to meeting you guys and talking a little bit about football and a lot about life. And if you happen to miss the show, you can now catch a replay Friday nights on 105.7 The Fan. Get all of your details for the Tyus Bowser Show right now at PressBoxOnline.com/Bowser.
The next Tyus Bowser Show is Tuesday, November 1st at the Hamilton Sports Bar and Grill, 5506 Hartford Road. It's brought to you by Maryland Vascular Specialists and the all-new Ginsu Kamado Grill.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Come experience Maryland's #1 sportsbook this NFL season at the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel, the ultimate place for any sports enthusiast. Take advantage of our 24/7 kiosks, massive video screens, and watch all the action from the best seat in the house. With more money paid out than anyone around, make every moment more at the new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
The Baltimore County Police Department is hiring. Entry-level officers start at close to $59,000 a year with a $10,000 bonus. Some restrictions apply. Plus a great retirement plan, medical, dental, and vision insurance, advancement to specialized units, tuition reimbursement, 15 sick days earned per calendar year, and even further incentives for military members and veterans. If you have a passion for service and want a career for life, visit joinbaltimorecountypd.com or call 410-887-5542. You must be a United States citizen, possess a valid driver's license, and have a high school diploma or GED equivalent. The Baltimore County Police Department is an equal opportunity employer.
Stan the Fan here, welcoming back one of my favorite sponsors, the Costas Inn. And everybody around Baltimore knows that the Costas Inn is a great place to go and grab crabs, steaks, salads, soups, whatever's on your mind to eat in person. But did you know that the Costas Inn has upped their game? They are now one of the premier takeout places in Baltimore. Give them a call now to order your food, 410-477-1975. That's the Costas Inn, over 4100 North Point Boulevard.
Experience the best in Kamado Grilling, a complete outdoor cooking appliance. The Ginsu Kamado Grill allows anyone to sear, grill, bake, and smoke all types of food. Designed for efficiency and function, the Ginsu Kamado Grill upholds the enduring legacy of the iconic Ginsu brand. The Ginsu Kamado Grill is perfect to cook all year round, is great for parties, and ideal for tailgating with your friends. Reserve your Ginsu Kamado Grill today at ginsugrills.com and get $100 off on your pre-order when you use the promo code TAILGATE. That's ginsugrills.com. Reserve yours today.
All right, we are back live here on The Batter. I want to remind you that today's show and the first hour of today's show was brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel. Come experience Maryland's #1 sportsbook this NFL season at the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel. The ultimate place for any sports enthusiast. Take advantage of our 24/7 kiosks, massive video screens, and watch all the action from the best seat in the house. With more money paid out than anyone around, make every moment more at the new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. Joining us in studio today is PressBox's editor, Luke Jackson. Luke has been on the Bat Around in the past, but he's never been in studio with us. And we kind of he and I ran into each other at the Orioles' final game of the season and talked for I felt so bad for my friend Adam.
I know, I was just about to say that. I felt bad for him because we were talking for about 10, 15 minutes, and he was just, looking at his shoes and just
yeah,
get me out of here.
Yeah, and
bad.
He's a big baseball guy, too. He and I, we met when we were 14 and bonded over the fact that we both love baseball. We played on the same travel team, and we
What position do you play?
I still play. I play in a men's 30 and over league, and Adam's actually on that team with me. I play in my spring and summer team because I'm one of the faster guys on the team. I play a lot of outfield.
Okay.
But every other team that I play on, whether it's in tournaments or in the fall, I play second base, shortstop, third base, and I pitch.
Oh. Okay.
So I'm kind of a jack of all trades. My manager has referred to me as his Ben Zobrist.
Oh.
So the pitches.
Comparisons.
Yeah. I'm an all right player, but Adam's a big baseball guy, and he's always talking to me about what he hopes the Orioles are going to do, what he thinks they're going to do. So I'm surprised he didn't have anything to say when you and I were talking. But two baseball guys like us, we can probably dominate a conversation. So that was certainly what happened there. So Luke is going to be with us in studio. We have the Glenn Clark Radio 3-shot up right now because we don't have the camera set up for our Bat Around 3-shot. And this is the first time we've had 3 guests in studio on camera since we moved to the new computer system. So we're working with what we got right now. Before we get into Luke, and it's going to be an excellent baseball roundtable, we're going to do a sounding off segment that is usually done by Zack Goodman, but it's sounding off with Zack Goodman featuring Ryan Blake today. And that segment today is brought to you by the all-new Ginsu Kamado Grill. It is the perfect ceramic tailgate or home grill to sear, grill, bake, and smoke all kinds of foods. Get the details and reserve yours today at ginsugrills.com and use the code TAILGATE to get $100 off your order. Come get a sample of the cooking from the Ginsu Kamado Grill tomorrow and before every Ravens home game this season at the Game Day Firehouse, located at the Firefighters Union Hall just west of the stadium at 1202 Ridgely Street. You can stop by, try some food, and enter to win a Ginsu Kamado ceramic grill and $500 worth of grilling meats. Ryan, what do you got for us today?
Well, first of all, is my name still Zack Goodman on the camera?
No, there are no names on the
there are
camera.
no names. Okay. I was going to say it would be fitting that this is sounding off with Zack Goodman featuring Ryan Blake. But anyway, guys, the Orioles infield pipeline is full of guys that I love. You've got Westberg, Norby, Ortiz, Hernandez, Mayo, just to name a few who might be knocking on the door sooner rather than later. They have a likely future stud in Gunnar Henderson already in the bigs. Jorge Mateo won many O's fans over with his speed and defense this season. Ramon Arias, as I've said on our show, Give That Fan a Podcast, should be a Gold Glove finalist at third base. I don't know if he will be, but he should be. Taron Vavra has shown that he deserves a shot at regular playing time as well. But none of those names are reasons why the guys should neglect the infield market in free agency. Trey Turner is an established major league stud. So is Carlos Correa. So is Xander Bogaerts. Even Dansby Swanson finally looks like the #1 overall pick. These are 4 guys who will be available as free agents for the Orioles to sign. I've seen way too many people on social media these past couple weeks say that they don't want the Orioles to sign a shortstop because of all the prospects we have already. But the thing is, that's exactly what they are, prospects. Mm-hmm. Maybe Jordan Westberg will be an all-star. Maybe Connor Norby will be an all-star. Maybe Joey Ortiz will be an all-star. Maybe. These 4 free agents I mentioned a minute ago all have been all-stars. Multiple times apiece aside from Dansby, who made his first in 2022. They are all above average with the bat and the glove. And for a major league general manager to neglect that market because of a few guys who might be that good one day would be irresponsible at best. If one or more of the prospects breaks into the big leagues and becomes a superstar, you find yourself with a roster crunch and more worthy players than positions on the big league diamond, you cross that bridge when you get to it. The only guy locked into an infield spot right now, for me at least, is Gunnar Henderson. He's going to be either your shortstop or your third baseman for the foreseeable future. Any of the free agents I listed would be an upgrade, at least for right now, over any of our other in-house options. I'm not saying I'm expecting it with any of these guys, but prospects fizzle out all the time. Be cautious with your expectations. There's no such thing as a sure thing. You guys imagine if the Orioles passed on Adley in the draft because they had Chancisco at catcher? It's the same. Yeah. It's the same reason major league teams don't draft for positional need.
It absolutely is, and there are. I believe Tim Anderson is a free agent this year. He's either a free agent or has an opportunity to opt out, but I saw him on the free.
Some sort of option,
right? Yeah. But aside from him, and Bogarts can opt out.
Bogarts,
right?
I think, will opt out. He hasn't decided yet. Correa said that he will.
Yeah. So look at the four main shortstops then, right? Bogarts, Correa, Turner, Swanson. Aside from being all-stars, what do all four of these guys have in common? They are all World Series champions. They are all World Series champions. You don't pass up on a World Series championship player who is a game changer just because you have prospects at a certain position.
Right.
If Aaron Judge calls the Orioles tomorrow and says, hey, if the Yankees lose this series and Aaron Judge calls him as soon as the season ends and says, hey, I want to come play for you, 5 years, $200 million.
The Orioles aren't going to say, no, we have Kyle Stowers. And
right. They're not going to say,
Colton
no,
Cowser.
we've got Kyle Stowers and Anthony Santander. They're going to say, I would like to think that they would say, okay, we're in. Now, $40 million, but you get my point.
Yeah.
You get my point. I'm not going to say that Judge would call and say, hey, $25 million a year, because that's just not going to happen.
Right.
If that happens, you sign the player, right? There's no chance in hell that if Trey Turner is available and the Orioles can afford him, that they shouldn't be picking up the phone immediately and getting him here. And by the way, Trey Turner is the shortstop of the four that I want the most. I think that guy is a game changer in every aspect of the game.
Yeah.
Luke?
Oh, yeah. Well, Turner's a perfect ball player.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's a central casting guy in terms of like a central casting shortstop, and he really fits a lot of what they need. Now, like you said, it's not going to be cheap. I would imagine that to at least start the conversation, you're looking at least 8,200 and more, probably along the lines of 8,250 to really get into the Trey Turner business. Now, Dansby Swanson, I'm not sure. Xander Bogaerts, I'm not sure. They're not as good as Trey. Mm-hmm. I will say, to your point, I like the guys that you mentioned. I love Connor Norby. I think after Gunnar got promoted to the major leagues, that Connor Norby had the best barrel to ball skills in the minor leagues for the Orioles.
Yeah,
that's how highly I think of his bat. And even if it's just so at second, I think he's going to hit enough that it isn't that you're not going to really worry about too much about whether his range is great at second base. With that being said, at the very least, I think you have to get a veteran infielder, better than Rougned Odor.
Yes, please.
A veteran infielder to protect yourself from some of these young players not progressing the way you want. Mm-hmm. So even if you think that Joey Ortiz can crack your lineup at shortstop at some point in the coming year, even if you think Jordan Westbrook or Connor Norby can do the same at second base, you're going to want a veteran infielder at the very least around. I know a buddy of mine brought up Joey Wendell, a guy who has had some success over a period of years, who could play multiple positions, someone who the manager can turn to in the event that your young guys do not progress the way that you hope they do, and that's the way it goes usually. You'll if you have a bunch of young players, a guy or two will take a step forward, and a guy or two just won't progress the way you hope. So I absolutely agree with you that they need to get, at the very least, a veteran infielder to help out. Now, whether that's going to be one of these big-name shortstop, I would probably bet against that. But I do think that they have to at least explore that, and I'm sure that they have. Turner, as perfect of a fit as that would be shocking. Mm-hmm. That would be legitimately the most shocking thing to happen in the history of the Orioles in free agency if they went into the territory that it's going to take to sign Trey Turner.
Yeah, and look, we have no idea the way Mike Elias operates under these circumstances.
We do not. Or John Angelos. We
right.
do not.
It's even though it's the same name on the paychecks, the same Angelos name, it's a different guy. He's giving complete autonomy to Mike Elias. And this isn't Sid Thrift. This isn't Dan Duquette. This is Mike Elias. And he's never been the GM of a team before, right? And when he says it's liftoff from here, everything else he said that he was gonna do, you look at the boxes that he put out there in his introductory press conference. He has checked every single box. I have no reason not to believe him. Now the question is, what does liftoff look like to Mike Elias as compared to the three of us sitting in this room? Mm-hmm. And that's what we don't know. That's a big unanswered question right now. We're going to find out. We're going to find out over the next 4 months. These free agent signings, they tend to take longer when it's these big name players, right? Mm-hmm. They tend to go into February, sometimes into March. Now, I don't think that players like Judge, Correa, Turner, all the names we've listed, I don't think they're doing themselves any favors by waiting that long, right? But if you're going to give them an offer, you can't give them the low ball because they're not going to sign it. And maybe they wait that long because they're waiting to see if they can use offers to leverage themselves into bigger contracts. And you got to remember, Scott Boras is going to be involved in this, right? So we'll see what happens. I do think that they have to make a veteran signing or at least have a veteran presence. I think that could be Ramon Arias. I don't know that Ramon Arias is going to be an everyday player for the Orioles because he can't stay on the field. But what he does do when he is on the field is he seems to come through in big clutch situations, and he plays elite defense at two different positions. At second base and at third base. And he can probably play good defense at shortstop. We just haven't really seen it for an extended period. So that could be the veteran guy that they have in case one of these guys falters that comes up. I like Connor Norby. You and I talked about this at the game the other day. Connor Norby, to me, he hit 400 in college, and then he comes to the majors. He comes to professional ball, and he finds that power that he started to find his final year in college. Hits 29 home runs to lead the minor leagues for the Orioles this year. The defense may be suspect, but like you said, if the bat plays, you can kind of live with that. I'm very interested to see what he can do. Jordan Westburg is kind of a guy who you can pretty much play anywhere except for first base, and he's not going to hurt you. And that includes all three outfield spots. And I think that his bat, he's the minor league player of the year for a reason for the Orioles. That it's going to be interesting to see what they do with those prospects. But back to the original point, certainly don't neglect signing a big name free agent just because you may have a prospect who could be something. Because like you said, at the end of the day, that's what they are. It's just prospects.
You have to anticipate the worst.
Yeah, and I think one of the smart things that they've done, you mentioned Westbrook, you mentioned Norby, they stacked a lot of redundancy in the minor leagues so that if they trade one of them, they have someone just like him behind them. So if you trade if you traded Kyle Stowers, you would have Dylan Beavers, who was a very similar kind of player. If you traded Hudson Haskin, you would have Judd Fabian.
Right.
If you traded Jordan Westburg, you would have Connor Norby. So I think that's what one thing that they've done very smartly is stack up at positions where they think they develop guys well, those athletic up the middle college position players, so that if they get to this point and want to trade one or two for a starting pitcher, a top of the line starting pitcher, they have someone who's kind of similar right behind them.
It's almost like they know what they're doing.
Almost.
We're going to get into more with Luke Jackson here for the rest of this hour, but first we do want to go over what's going on with the postseason right now, and we're going to do that next in the payoff pitch around the league, which is brought to you by the Guilford Hall Brewery. Have you been to Guilford Hall Brewery? Located in Baltimore Station North neighborhood, Guilford Hall Brewery breaks the craft mold with their great handcrafted microbrews and amazing Bavarian-style food selections. Join Guilford Hall 7 days a week for Orioles, Ravens, and all of your favorite college games. Make plans now to watch the big games, play trivia, or bring your dog for Yappy Hour. They even have free valet service on Friday and Saturday nights, so go to guilfordhall.com for a complete schedule of events, beer listings, and food and drink specials. That's Guilford Hall Brewery, 1611 Guilford Avenue in Station North. And now, the payoff pitch around the league. Giancarlo Stanton hit a 2-run homer in the first inning, but it was all goose eggs after that as Shane Bieber locked in and Cleveland scratched and clawed their way back, tying the game on an Ahmed Rosario 5th inning blast before ultimately winning it in 10, 4-2 on run-scoring knocks from Oscar Gonzalez and Josh Naylor. Aaron Judge wore the golden sombrero with 4 strikeouts and is now 0 for 8 with 7 Ks in the series. Bryce Harper and Rhys Hoskins hit 2-run and 3-run homers in a 6-run third inning, and Harper added a run-scoring double in a 3-run seventh to back 6 stellar innings from Aaron Nola as the Phillies are now 1 win away from the LCS after a 9-1 rout of the defending champion Braves. And finally, Trent Grisham hit his 3rd homer of the postseason, and Blake Snell allowed 1 run in 5 1/3 innings before the bullpen shut the door with 3 2/3 scoreless frames, giving the unit 13 scoreless innings in the series and giving the Padres a 2-1 series lead with a 2-1 victory over the favored Dodgers. Zach, sorry. It was bound to happen. It was bound to happen. Ryan, 4 games today. What do we have on tap across the postseason slate?
Yeah, Paul, we've got a full slate of LCS games today, starting at 2:07 with the Braves and the Phillies. Atlanta will send 38-year-old Charlie Morton to the mound with their season on the line. This will be his first postseason start since last year's World Series when he was hit with a 102-mile-an-hour comebacker which fractured his fibula. He faced 3 more hitters, striking out 2 of them and retiring the 3rd. I once fractured my fibula on the golf course, and 10 minutes later I hit my best drive of the day, so Charlie and I have a lot in common. I was hit with a drive. Don't question it. Noah Syndergaard hurled.
This is my nightmare.
Oh, it was terrible. Noah Syndergaard hurled a scoreless inning in Philadelphia's Game 2 loss and will get the start this afternoon in Game 4. He comes in with a 2.33 ERA and 27 career postseason innings and will hope to channel the dominant pitcher he once was. The Mariners face elimination at 4:07 as they'll take on the Astros in Game 3 of that series. Rookie George Kirby, who got the save in the Wild Card Series clincher versus Toronto, will try to extend Seattle's first postseason trip since 2001 for at least 1 more game. Kirby, despite being in the rotation for the majority of the regular season, somehow only faced the Astros once, and for what it's worth, he struck out Yordan Alvarez both times he saw him. For Houston, looking to advance to their 6th consecutive ALCS, it'll be Lance McCullers Jr., who missed a chunk of the season with a forearm strain suffered in last year's ALDS, but has pitched to a 2.27 ERA in just under 50 innings since returning this season. The other American League Division Series returns to Cleveland, knotted at 1 game apiece, and is the only series that cannot end today. The Guardians sent 25-year-old Brooklyn-born Tristan McKenzie to the hill. He was the starting pitcher in the wildcard game last Saturday against the Rays that was scoreless until the 15th inning. He struck out 8 in 6 innings after posting a sub-3 ERA in the regular season. Opposite him will be Luis Severino for the Yankees, who is finally healthy and looks like himself again, but has a 5.23 ERA in 32 2/3 postseason innings in his career. First pitch for that one will be at 7:37 tonight. And finally at 9:37, it's Game 4 between the Dodgers and the Padres. It'll be lefty Tyler Anderson, who just put together by far the best season of his career at 32 years old. He'll try to keep the juggernaut 111-win Dodgers alive. Meanwhile, San Diego native Joe Musgrove, who back in April delivered the first no-hitter in Padres history, will have a chance to send his childhood favorite team to their 3rd league championship series in franchise history and first since 1998. Guys, the last time the Padres played in an LCS game, I know I just said it was 98, but the date was October 14th. Their current right fielder, Juan Soto, was born 11 days later.
Wow. That's
my little nugget for
that. Way to make us feel old. Thanks, Ryan.
I'm sorry.
That was the payoff pitch around the league. We're going to catch our second break here. The payoff pitch around the league was also brought to you today by the Toyota Tacoma, which comes in a range of models and trim lines. You can choose the perfect Tacoma to reflect your unique personality and driving habits. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Tacomas from your local Toyota dealer today. When we come back, playoff and Orioles banter with Luke Jackson. That and more next on the Bat Around.
Have you been to Guilford Hall Brewery? Located in Baltimore's Station North neighborhood, Guilford Hall Brewery breaks the craft brew mold with their great handcrafted microbrews and amazing Bavarian-style food selections. Join Guilford Hall 7 days a week for Orioles, Ravens, and all of your favorite college games. Make plans now to watch the big games, play trivia, or bring your dog for Yappy Hour. They even have free valet service on Friday and Saturday nights. Go to guilfordhall.com for a complete schedule of events, beer listings, and food and drink specials. We'll see you at Guilford Hall Brewery.
Make the most out of every day in your Toyota RAV4. Available in hybrid or gas-only models. A RAV4 can get you where you want to go in style. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new RAV4s from your local Toyota dealer today.
See Olympic athletes in action as the nation's best horses and riders compete in one of the world's premier equestrian events at the Mars Maryland 5-Star at Fair Hill, presented by Brown Academy, October 13th through 16th in Cecil County. Don't miss the breathtaking excitement of the dynamic cross-country competition or the elegance of dressage and precision of show jumping. There's also great shopping and activities, including a fresh food fest, corgi race, and a beer, wine, and spirits showcase. So come enjoy a beautiful fall day at the Mars Maryland 5-Star at Fair Hill, presented by Brown Advisory, October 13th through 16th. Learn more and buy tickets at maryland5star.us.
Stan the Fan here, welcoming back one of my favorite sponsors, the Costas Inn. And everybody around Baltimore knows that the Costas Inn is a great place to go and grab crabs, steaks, salads, soups, whatever's on your mind to eat in person. But did you know that the Costas Inn has upped their game? They are now one of the premier takeout places in Baltimore. Give them a call now to order your food, 410-477-1975. That's the Costas Inn, over 4100 North Point Boulevard.
The Baltimore County Police Department is hiring. Entry-level officers start at close to $59,000 a year with a $10,000 bonus. Some restrictions apply. Plus a great retirement plan, medical, dental, and vision insurance, advancement to specialized units, tuition reimbursement, 15 sick days earned per calendar year, and even further incentives for military members and veterans. If you have a passion for service and want a career for life, visit joinbaltimorecountypd.com or call 410-887-5542. You must be a United States citizen, possess a valid driver's license, and have a high school diploma or GED equivalent. The Baltimore County Police Department is an equal opportunity employer.
Sports betting has come to Maryland, and we're ready to help you win some money. Tune in for Simply the Bets every Tuesday morning at 11:40. FanDuel Sportsbook assistant GM Leon Twyman and VSiN's Aaron Oster join the guys every week to give you all of the info you need and offer you a few winners. And every other Thursday at 11:40, tune in for Weekend at Bookies as Andrew Stecca and Alloy Sports' Brad Kronthal help make you some money for the weekend. So come win some money with us on Simply the Bets every Tuesday and Weekend at Bookies every other Thursday, brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel Maryland. Listen at PressBoxOnline.com/radio. Watch at YouTube.com/PressBoxOnline.
Experience the best in Kamado Grilling, a complete outdoor cooking appliance. The Ginsu Kamado Grill allows anyone to sear, grill, bake, and smoke all types of food. Designed for efficiency and function, the Ginsu Kamado Grill upholds the enduring legacy of the iconic Ginsu brand. The Ginsu Kamado Grill is perfect to cook all year round, is great for parties, and ideal for tailgating with your friends. Reserve your Ginsu Kamado Grill today at ginsugrills.com and get $100 off on your pre-order when you use the promo code TAILGATE. That's ginsugrills.com. Reserve yours today.
All right, welcome back to the Bat Around, coming to you live from our Towson studios on a beautiful Saturday morning. It's a nice day for Maryland football, which I'm going to be watching. I believe they play at noon today, right?
3:30, I think.
Oh, 3:30, so I will not be watching it.
Okay.
When I leave here, but I can watch it at work. Well into the second hour here of the Bat Around. Luke Jackson, PressBox's editor, is in studio with us for this baseball roundtable. Today's Orioles and playoff banter is brought to you by the Maryland 5-Star. See Olympic athletes in action as the nation's best horses and riders compete in one of the world's premier equestrian events at the Mars Maryland 5-Star at Fair Hill, presented by Brown Advisory today and tomorrow in Cecil. That's the second time I've said Cecil County. Find out more at maryland5star.us. Now, we're going to start off today. Luke is here because we're going to talk a lot about the Orioles and where we think they can upgrade, what we think they're going to do throughout the off season, but it's been quite the interesting postseason so far. It's been, honestly, as exciting a postseason as I can remember. I've been glued to my TV when I can be for these games. I've been coming home from work and just sitting in bed and watching baseball till 1 o'clock in the morning. It's been awesome. So we're going to start off talking about the series that have happened and the series that are continuing to go on. And we're going to start with the Guardians sweep of the Rays. 4 runs total scored in the series. Guardians matched a Jose Siri home run in Game 1. In the bottom half of that frame, they get a 2-run homer from their own Jose Ramirez to give them the 2-1 lead and the 2-1 victory. Then Game 2, scoreless through 9, scoreless through 10, 11, 12, 13. First postseason game in Major League history to go beyond 13 innings scoreless. Finally, bottom of the 15th inning, was Oscar Gonzalez comes up to the plate. Oscar Gonzalez, right?
Yeah, with the SpongeBob theme song. Walk-up.
And he hits the walk-off home run to catapult the Cleveland Guardians into the LDS. And this is a team that, along with the Orioles and the Athletics, were widely ripped apart this past year before the season started for having such low payrolls and not making a competitive effort. And yet, here are the Guardians back where they always are, atop the AL Central, the youngest roster in baseball, one of the youngest and brightest pitching staffs in baseball, starting with Shane Bieber and continuing with Tristan McKenzie. This is a team that, as Stan has said, that they were his dark horse candidate at the beginning of the year to make a run into the postseason. I never bought into them being terrible. I never bought into that because I looked at the pitching and I looked at Jose. Why would Jose Ramirez sign on the way he did to be on a terrible baseball team? That was my clue number one, that this team is better than people think. Analysis here, Luke and Ryan. The Guardians, are they good enough to get past the Yankees and make a competitive ALCS with who I honestly think it's going to be the Astros? Are they good enough to beat the Yankees and make it competitive in the ALCS?
I think they absolutely are. What do you think?
I think so. The pitching is probably the best in the postseason. When you look at the bullpen, there are 6 guys in that bullpen that I can send out with confidence.
Mm-hmm.
It's even in this series against the Yankees, are the Yankees the better team? Probably. But if the game comes down to the bullpen, as we see in the postseason all the time, advantage Cleveland.
Yeah, you mentioned that Cleveland has 6 relievers that they can send out confidently. At this point in the year, most teams have like 3, maybe 4. So that's an advantage Cleveland's going to have over any team that they face, is that bullpen. And if I'm not mistaken, Cleveland relievers are striking out like nearly 40% of the hitters that they've faced in the postseason. So that's only 4 games, but still, that's a lot. And when you have the starting pitching that Cleveland has, those starters go deep enough to really put those relievers in a position to succeed. And what the other thing that Cleveland really does well, and this complements their pitching so well, they catch the ball. Mm-hmm. They can really, really catch the ball. And I know that Orioles fans had fun on Twitter poking fun at Stephen Kwan. Stephen Kwan's a hell of a player.
Yeah, he's a good ball player.
I mean, he's getting on base as a rookie. And like you mentioned, Cleveland, 16 or 17 rookies made their debut this year, and most of those guys ended up contributing in a real way, including Kwan, who got on base at 37% of the time.
And walked more than he struck out, which never happens for a rookie.
And made a big play in left field yesterday to save a couple runs. And if he doesn't make that play, it's 4-0 Yankees. And,
right.
Game's probably over at that point. So I like the one thing I don't like about the Guardians, and this is the same way, the same thing that everyone thinks, they give away outs at the bottom of their order. I mean, Austin Hedges, he can really catch.
Mm-hmm.
The best thing you could say about his bat is that he can really catch. He blocked a ball yesterday that really had no business not being a wild pitch, but a buddy of mine sent this to me. He's got like 1,800 major league at bats throughout his career, and doesn't even have a 600 OPS.
Right.
Like, I don't know how many hitters have been allowed to bat that many times and be that bad
on a good team.
On a good team, and then Miles Straw, he's an even worse hitter than Hedges. So anyway, that's where the Guardians really lose me, and I figure that by the end of the postseason, that'll probably be their undoing. That the bottom of their order just is so punchless.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you look around the league, it's amazing how many of these huge payroll teams come into October with like half a lineup.
Right.
It's amazing to me. Like even like the Yankees without Benintendi and DJ LeMahieu, like their lineup gets thin awfully quick, and they start relying on guys who just came up in like August.
Yeah.
And the Dodgers yesterday, I thought like the bottom of third of their order. See, when I watch the Dodgers, sometimes it's they've got a little thing going on where they outscore their opponents by like 350 runs this year. So I don't want to. But sometimes you're like, how much of that is beaten up on the Diamondbacks? Like, how much of that is beaten up on the Rockies? Because they have like guys at the bottom of their order who I don't know. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent.
That's what you're here for.
I want to go back to your point about Austin Hedges. He's played 605 regular season games in his career, 2,001 plate appearances.
Okay.
His career on base percentage is .247.
That's insane.
Not his batting average. His on base percentage.
That's insane. That's worse than Jorge Mateo.
Yeah.
I mean, that's absolutely insane to have an on base. But if you're a good defensive catcher,
he must be unreal with the pitchers.
Yeah,
the pitchers must absolutely love throwing to him.
And what this all tells me, with these offenses that are struggling so much, is that pitching is still ultimately pitching and defense is ultimately what still wins championships.
The postseason is a pitcher's game.
Yeah,
in my opinion,
it absolutely is,
and stuff plays in the postseason. And so, I was thinking about this before I came on the show. Blake's during the game yesterday. Blake Snell is a guy who could be really frustrating during the regular season, right? Because he's a 5-and-diver, and it's like 5 innings, 2 runs, 109 pitches, maybe 5 1/3. It's very frustrating because he can kind of burn through a bullpen during the regular season. But once the playoffs hit, if he can stuff his way through 5 1/3, then you have like fresh relievers usually who can stuff their way through the final 4 innings of that game. And
not to mention you're also able to use starters that maybe you wouldn't have to use in that series as a starter in relief. That's how the Nationals won a World Series in 2019. They had historically the worst bullpen of all time. And then they get to the postseason, and when you can have
kind of make it up as you go along.
When you can have Scherzer Strasburg start a game, and Scherzer can come in and pitch the 7th through the 9th innings, you're going to win that ball game 9 times out of 10. It's very interesting to see, like you said, a punchless lineup, at least in the bottom third from Cleveland. But they're hanging around because they can outpitch you, and I just think that that's so cool. Now another team that gets to the postseason because they can outpitch you, they've been to a couple World Series and never won one, and that's the Rays, and that's who the Guardians beat in that wild card round. They scored 1 run in 24 innings in that series. They backed into the postseason. They lost 5 straight to end the regular season, 12 of 16, 7 of their last 9, and then they lose both games. So they lost 7 straight games to end the year. How does Tampa Bay feel good about their season, knowing that, we made the postseason, but we lost our last 7 games? 1. And 2, Luke, and Ryan and I have talked about this, has the league kind of caught up to what Tampa Bay does? Tampa Bay, what they do is they go out there and they bring up these prospects and they make them into stars, and then they trade them. And then they continue to do that, and it's a cycle that goes through there, rinse and repeat. And then they have great pitching development, so they can have a starter like a Tyler Glasnow, or they can have a they can trade guys in the past like a James Shields and a Matt Garza and a Chris Archer, and have somebody ready to take their place immediately. Is that going to continue to work? It's worked for 15 years, but they've kind of gotten progressively worse each of the last 2 years after making that World Series in that truncated season.
They had a lot of injuries this year.
Yeah.
And I would say it was a fluky amount of injuries.
Yeah.
And I don't
like the Ravens from last year.
Yeah. So I don't suspect that that'll continue. The one injury that really I don't think they ever bounced back from or really replaced him in any way was Brandon Lau. He was a guy who had 40 home runs in 2021. Now, the ball was different. And so, and he was facing an historically, it felt like about 20 of those home runs came against the Orioles. And historically bad pitching staff. But he was a left-handed power bat that they could never really replace. Like G-Man Choi wasn't going to replace what Brandon Lau brings to the table. And that was an advantage they had at second. But, like, who else they're playing has a second baseman who can hit 40 home runs in a season? Like, that was an advantage that they had that they just never really could get back. Now, to your point, it could. I still think that they're going to continue on with the way they do business. I thought it was funny. I think they signed Glasnow to a 2024 contract. And it was $25 million. And I'm thinking, like, okay, they're not paying that. Like, someone else is going to pay that. And so, I think it'll probably end up, being the same. And I think that another injury that, like, they never got the Wander Franco that they thought they were going to get this year.
Right.
He was in and out of the lineup, and when he was in the lineup outside of April, he wasn't very good. So if he's fully healthy next year, that's a guy that has all the equipment to be an MVP candidate.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could help them out next year as well. So I think they'll still be in the mix next year. They'll probably have better health, and they'll probably just do what they do. Now, to your point, it was a very disappointing end to their season. They only won 86 games this year.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, the Orioles were only 4 games away from overtaking them.
They opened the door and tried to usher the Orioles through to end the year.
The Orioles just ran out of gas.
Yeah.
You could say the same thing about the Rays too.
No, absolutely.
Like they just seemed like the injuries kind of caught up with them at the end of the year.
Yeah. Even Seattle started to falter toward the end.
Yeah. I mean, when you play at such a high level and you're playing with your hair on fire for as long as teams like the Orioles, the Rays, and the Mariners did, and maybe they aren't the most talented rosters, or maybe in the Mariners' case they have a talented roster,
right.
but it's a bunch of young guys who have never played this many games and never been in this situation before. It's going to catch up with you at some point, and unfortunately that tends to be at the end of the year when you need to be playing your best, most inspired baseball to try and make that postseason run. So I do agree that's probably what's happened here. With Seattle, this was Seattle's bugaboo all year was the Astros are just the Astros. Even if they're better, they were about 20 games better than the Mariners this year. But even if they aren't 20 games better than the Mariners, they have that playoff pedigree. They have that know-how of how to get through a 162-game season, continuously win, and then get to the postseason and still play winning baseball. They know how to do that. Seattle's never been there. Nobody in that franchise has been there since the last time that they got to the postseason. They're down 2-0 right now to these Astros. Yordan Alvarez has been playing baseball god for the last 2 games against them. It's been their Achilles heel. We talked about it. They won 14 straight games and immediately got swept by the Astros coming out of the All-Star break. They lost 5 straight to the Astros to start the second half, with a series in between. Is there any chance for Seattle to get back into this series, or can you just see it being a sweep and it's over after today?
Well, Seattle's going to be a madhouse, like that's for sure. And this series has to be so frustrating for the Mariners and their fans so far.
Yeah,
they have been better than the Astros, but for one guy.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Mariners have to feel like they're right there.
Yeah.
And it's one guy that's basically ruined their postseason. Now, Yordan is like the perfect left-handed hitter. For me, he's the best left-handed hitter in baseball.
Right.
Better than Freeman, better than Soto, better than Harper, better than Devers. He's unbelievable. And like I was talking about, like a central casting. He's a central casting left-handed hitter. He's incredible. Now, what's interesting to me is that they only have 2 left-handers on their staff for this series, which I could have told you that, and not that Yordan hits everyone. He's got like an 1,000 OPS against lefties.
Yeah.
I was actually texting with Stan. I was joking around. I said, well, they could have traded the Orioles, Julio Rodriguez, for Cionel Perez. I would have said yes to that.
Yeah, right.
But yes, to your original question, Seattle's going to be a madhouse. I think they could very easily take these next 2, but it's hard for me to envision them taking the next 3. I don't know. But because of Alvarez, I think outside of him, I think the teams are pretty even, but he's the difference maker.
Yeah, Alvarez to me is. Even if he may not be the best left-handed hitter, but he's easily the most terrifying. He's the guy I least want to face.
It's like a left-handed Frank Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect comparison.
And I think he's 25.
Yeah, he's a young guy. I mean, he was this good when he came up as a rookie.
Can you imagine if the Dodgers hadn't traded him? The Dodgers traded him in 2016 for Josh Fields. It's crazy to think about. Exactly.
Right.
No, I don't necessarily think that. I kind of agree with your point there, Luke. I could see Seattle taking the 2 games in Seattle. I don't think they will. This is basically the start of a 3-game series against the best team in the American League that they have to sweep. I don't see that happening.
And you look at it, really, I mean, they've had 2 games in Houston, and Altuve didn't do anything, and they weren't able to scratch a win off in either of those.
Right.
And now I have to imagine that Altuve is going to get going pretty soon. And see if like even Alvarez cools down, that others are going to others are going to step up. Maybe Trey Mancini will be one of those who steps up. Speaking of that, I thought that the Astros would do a little bit more at the deadline than Trey and Christian Vasquez. But I was just talking to someone who would know, and this person was like, dude, you don't understand that. That's a really thin farm system. Like, that's all they could really do.
Yeah.
And so it's just weird when you have a team that can legitimately win the World Series and you come away from the deadline with like Trey and Christian Vasquez, and you're like, really? But but apparently that's where their farm system sits right now, because they haven't been picking, they haven't been drafting.
That's
so
true.
they don't have any first round picks the past few years. So
yeah, and honestly, they still won 106 games. They're still the
left.
odds on right. They're still the odds on favorite, and they have the best young left-handed hitter in the game in the middle of their lineup. That I think they'll be okay. I think they'll be okay. Now the Blue Jays, all the talent in the world. They have some of the best. They have one of the best lineups in all of baseball. They've got Barrios and Gausman and Manoah at the top of their rotation. They've got Romero It's
Romano.
Romano. I keep calling him Romero, but it's Romano. I got to think Ray Romano.
Ricky Romero.
They had a
That's who you're thinking of.
Ricky Romero.
Yeah.
But they've got Romano in the back end of their bullpen. This team was my pick to represent the American League in the World Series this year. A lot of people's pick. They won 91 games last year and missed the postseason. This year they win less games. They get to the postseason, and they're ousted. 2-0 in the wild card round by the Seattle Mariners. They had an 8-1 lead in the 5th inning against the Mariners, and they lose that game 10-9. Luke, is this the most underachieving team in baseball?
Yes. I think that their lineup from top to bottom was the best in the American League coming into this year. It's better than New York's. It's better than Houston's. And for me, when I watched Orioles games, that Toronto's lineup was the one that was most relentless from top to bottom. And I love Manoah. I love Gausman. It felt like they left something on the table this year. Now it is a tough division, so that could explain the win total a little bit. What, they win like 89 games?
Yeah, I believe it was 89.
They're more talented than an 89 win team. And I know they were having bullpen issues, which can drag down a win total. But to your point, is this the most underachieving team? I think you could certainly make that case. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. You look at that lineup, and they should be an offensive juggernaut, and at times they looked like they were.
So inconsistent.
Very inconsistent. Springer having injury concerns. Bo Bichette was not exceptionally good until the final month of the season. He's a guy they need to be a little bit more consistent.
He was just so damn good in September, though. I think he finished the year leading the American League in hits.
Yep.
I think so, yeah. And as he was on my fantasy team, so I appreciate that. Jose Barrios supposed to be an ace on that staff. Obviously they got Manoah and Gausman, who are going to be great in their own right, but Barrios is supposed to be right up there with them. He had never had a full season ERA over 4. He was a 5.23 this year.
Yep.
He's a guy who very heavily underachieved. Yusei Kikuchi lost his starting role. Stan mentioned Ryu, who hasn't been anything special.
He's hurt.
And exactly. And so, it's a team that you expect to be a lot better than they were. I don't remember if they were my preseason pick to go to the World Series, but they were certainly up there in the discussion. It's got to be a disappointing end for them, leave a bitter taste in their mouth. As an Orioles fan, I'm delighted.
Oh, yeah. Watching them blow the 8-1 lead, there was nothing more thrilling for me to this point in the postseason, except for maybe Alvarez, because that helped me with take to rake, which we'll get to later in the program. But, look, this is a team that I would not be shocked in the least to see them go out there and add another starting pitcher, like a legitimate starting pitcher. I think they need some bullpen help.
They need a left-handed bat.
And they got to add another
time.
bat. And Stan said, and I agree with him, I think it's time to take George Springer out of center field. And it's not because
keep him healthy.
Yeah, because he's a great center fielder, he's a great player, but if he's not in the field, then he's not helping you.
Right.
And he's their engine.
Right.
He's the guy, when he's out there and going well, they become very difficult to slow down. Their offense becomes very difficult to slow down. And when he's not in there, they become a lot easier to navigate.
And the way he takes his at-bats is so crazy, because that first pitch that he swings at, he will sell out for that thing every single time and try and hit it 900 feet. And if he doesn't miss it, He just puts together a professional at bat after that, fouls off pitch, and the next thing you know, he's on second base with a double. He's
doing it since he was at UConn.
He's such a good player. Such a good player, but if he's not on the field, you're paying him a lot of money to not do anything for you.
We saw it against the Orioles that he's kind of the catalyst of that lineup. You know, it felt like we were in a lot of games, and I might be exaggerating this a little bit, might be a little hyperbole, but it felt like we were in a lot of games against Toronto until like a fifth inning 2-run double by George Springer, and then it felt like the game was over. I feel like that happened several times throughout the season. He's a guy you need in the lineup. If you pull him out of center field, keep him healthy. Because he was back for the playoffs, and then he collides with Bo Bichette, and sure enough, he's out again.
Right.
Granted, that didn't really come back to bite him because it was the 8th inning of Game 2 of the wild card series. They ended up losing, but he's a guy you need in the lineup. So yeah, maybe you switch him to DH. But I agree with your point, Luke. They need a left-handed bat. Who's there? They've got Jackie Bradley, Kevin Biggio,
Raimel Tapia.
Yeah. That's not going to do it. They need a big power left-handed bat.
Jock Peterson could be.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you could bring in, I don't know, can Jock play center at this point? Probably not.
No, but I feel like you could probably put, you could put Tapia out there. You could put
Teoscar
in center. I feel like there's got to be somebody.
I was thinking like move Springer to left and bring in like a left-handed hitting center fielder.
He plays so hard.
Right.
He just plays so
you
hard.
You almost have to save him from himself.
Exactly. And speaking of Teoscar, if it wasn't Springer, it was either Chapman or Teoscar who were coming up with those big hits. And Teoscar Hernandez he's the best hitter that nobody talks about. For my money, he might be the best hitter on that team. And I'm including Vladdy in that. He is just so consistently good. Mm-hmm. I'm a big Teoscar guy. I think that he's incredible.
Came up in the Houston program.
Yeah, no way. The Blue Jays, they got to do a little. They're almost a complete team. But get that left-handed bat, they're probably going to add another starting pitcher in this offseason. Mm-hmm. I don't want them to, but they probably know they need to. I
wonder if they would have to move out any contracts to make that happen because they're sort of all in at this point.
Yeah.
They pushed a lot of chips into and so they're still paying, are they paying Ryu next year as well to rehab? Or is he done?
I think so.
So I don't know if there are any contracts that they can move still. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like Barrios is making a lot of money now.
I don't think they'd trade him, but
I don't know.
They'd be selling low.
I think they might have to move out some money to really do what they want to do because I think they've kind of maxed out their payroll this year.
Maybe, but I also don't think that getting a guy like Jock Peterson is going to cost you the farm. I think you can have Peterson for $15 million a year or less because he's kind of a one-trick pony. Yeah, and at least in my opinion, he's a guy who strikes out a good bit. He walks a good bit, has power, but this was maybe his best offensive season, and it was still middling, in my opinion. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see what they do. They seem to have no problem spending money, and there's no salary cap in baseball. So they have the luxury tax, which works as like a loose salary cap. But I don't know. I don't know that the Blue Jays are going to be stopped if they really want to go get somebody they think puts them over the top.
To answer your question, Luke, Ryu's on the books for $20 million next year. It's the final year of his 4-year, $80 million contract.
That's a problem for them.
He's a free agent.
Do they get insurance from that though?
I don't know how that works.
I
don't know.
I'm not exactly positive. I know it's a thing, but I'm not sure how that works. We got to move on here, but because we do want to get to some Orioles stuff here. Phillies out-pitch, out-hit, outshine the Cardinals for a sweep. Bryce Harper hits that home run in Game 2, and that bat has really gotten going. Are their bats enough? Are their bats and their starting pitching good enough to take them to the next round and beyond?
I still think the Braves are no worse than a coin flip to win this series. Mm-hmm. When you look at the pitching matchups, they've got Morton, who's a veteran big game pitcher, going today against Thor, who probably won't go that long. It's probably going to be somewhat of a bullpen game for Philadelphia because Syndergaard threw a little bit a couple days ago, so I would imagine he'll go 3, maybe 4 innings, maybe. And one of the issues, again, with Syndergaard, every time he pitches, once anyone gets on base, it's a track meet because he can't hold any runners. That's an issue. That'll be an issue for Philadelphia today. I think that game starts at 1. And then in Game 5, it would be Ranger Suarez, a second look at him for Atlanta, and Atlanta's lineup kills left-handed pitching, and they were on the verge of doing that to Suarez before Thompson got him out of that game.
Houdini
act. Yeah, he was like walking a tightrope that entire game. And then they would have Max Fried going at home, and I doubt he's going to be as bad as he was in Game 1. So I still think the Braves are no worse than a coin flip to win this series.
Sure.
Now, it's going to be a madhouse in Philly. That atmosphere yesterday was awesome. Yeah, that was a lot of pent-up energy for Phillies fans because they haven't had a home playoff game in over, I think it's about 10 years.
2011.
Yeah. So yeah, it's, and if they can hop on Morton early and get that party going, maybe it's a different story. I still think the Braves are no worse than a coin flip to win this series still.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say I think the Braves are the better team, but you also have to consider that the Phillies are up 2-1 in this series despite the top 2 hitters in their lineup, Kyle Schwarber and Rhys Hoskins, both hitting under 100 in the postseason. If one of those guys can get it going, we saw it with Hoskins yesterday, hit a massive home run, epic bat slam. That was cool to see. If those guys can get it going a little bit and, like you said, get to Morton early, I think the Phillies could end it today. But I agree with you that the Braves are the better team, and when you look at the pitching matchups, could easily take the next 2.
If Schwarber gets on one of his heaters, and there's no hitter in baseball who gets hotter than Schwarber, he can legitimately carry them to a World Series title.
He can be their Jordan.
I'll tell you, man, people talk about, and they're going to talk about that Rhys Hoskins home run and that bat slam for a long time. For me, the Harper home run was the bigger one. For me, the Harper home run was bigger because, A, he's gotten hot at exactly the right time. He was not Bryce Harper when he came off the IL, and he's gotten hot at the right time, and it's still 4-1. When he hits that home run, the Braves are thinking, all right, we can still come back.
Hitter's Park, yeah.
Yeah, we can still come back in this. Harper hits that 2-run homer into that sea of red and white out there in right field, and it makes it a 6-1 game, and it just
6-0, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, you're right. It makes it a 6-0 game, and no, it was 6-1. It was 6-1 because it was the game was 1-1, I believe, when the 3-run homer got hit.
Oh, okay.
But he hits that home run, and it's gonna suck all the rest of the way.
That was the MVP swat off the left-hander.
Yeah, that was that. I mean, Bryce Harper when Bryce Harper's hot, he might be the best player in baseball, and I think he's hot right now. That home run was huge for them. Their offense, their firepower, and we're not talking about Nick Castellanos, who looks more like Nick Castellanos in the postseason than he did at any point during the regular season. So I know he's only hitting 263, but I've liked the swings he's put out a lot more this postseason so far. Padres take down the Mets in 3. Scherzer got roughed up. Now Scherzer, he posted the lowest ERA of his career this year at 2.29, albeit in 23 starts. But 4 of his last 8 starts, including the postseason, he's given up 4 runs. His last 2 starts, he's given up 8 runs on 6 home runs. What's going on with Max Scherzer? Are you worried about him moving into next season? And another question just about the Mets in general. Buck Showalter, really good at getting his team to the postseason, but then he doesn't make any noise once he gets there. Is this going to be his MO for his entire career?
Yeah, the thing with Buck is that how many times has he even gotten close to a World Series? Like, Dusty Baker has gotten, tantalizingly close to winning a World Series.
He's been in a World Series, yeah.
Like, Buck, I don't think, obviously here...
Got to the ALCS.
Didn't even win an ALCS game. I don't know, how close he's even gotten to winning a World Series. I don't know if that says anything about Buck. I don't know if that's just random. But to your other question was about Max. This is his second straight year where he's sort of run out of gas at the end of the year, and he's 38 years old.
Yeah, real quick, I want to apologize for the background noise. There's always people out here doing landscaping work during our show, so I apologize if you can hear that in the background. But continue, my bad.
Basically, last postseason with the Dodgers, he didn't make his final start because basically his arm was fried. And then he gets $45 million a year from the Mets over 2-3 years. And again, in the postseason, not very, and he wasn't very good in that big series in Atlanta. So I don't know if it's not like he threw that many innings this year. Like you said, only 23 starts, and a lot of those starts were managed. It's not like Buck just let him go in a lot of those starts.
Right.
So I don't know if it's how many miles he has on the odometer, but that would certainly be a concern for me if I'm a Mets fan and I'm thinking about how do we take the next step in the postseason over the next couple of years. Obviously, Max Scherzer is going to have to be a part of that. The last 2 postseasons, not very good for Max. And normally you could just hand wave that away as being fluky, but the guy's 38, 39 years old, got a lot of miles on that odometer.
Yeah, he's still a guy I want on my team, but you talk about the struggles in the postseason. He's getting older. He doesn't have the velocity he used to. it is concerning. You know, when a team that's looking to make a run at a World Series, you said it a little bit ago. Pitching is king in the playoffs.
Stuff is king.
Stuff is king. Yeah, I mean, Josh Hader, he had never thrown a pitch 100 miles an hour in his career. He's thrown 5 in the postseason this year.
Did you see that changeup he threw yesterday?
It was nasty. It was like 94.
When he threw that, I'm like, that's the first changeup I've ever seen Josh Hader throw. I really just thought he was fastball breaking ball, four-seam breaking ball.
Yeah,
like he throws that changeup. That's the nastiest pitch I've ever seen him throw.
Worst year of his career, though he still converted 90% of his saves, 36 and 40. Worst year of his career. Sometimes you got to evolve or evolve or die, right?
Exactly.
That's kind of what he's doing. And the Padres, they look like a completely different team under Bob Melvin. They've got Juan Soto, they've got Josh Bell. They're kind of negating the loss of Tatis. Imagine if they had Tatis. Assuming he's able to do what he was doing and it wasn't PEDs. And I think that's probably likely the case. I think the PEDs would help come back from injury more quickly. But that's a topic for another day. Bob Melvin, to me, is a difference maker for that team because the Padres had all the talent in the world, but they had Jace Tingler as their manager, and that guy couldn't manage his way out of a wet bag. You bring in Bob Melvin, and suddenly this team's back in the postseason, and they're sticking it to the 111-win Dodgers. But Ryan and I were talking about this earlier. The Padres, A, they're fun again. B, Manny Machado might be the MVP this year because you can make the argument nobody was more valuable to their team aside from in the National League.
If I had a vote, I'd certainly consider voting for him.
Yeah. And they've got pitching. They've got the pitching to do this. They've got Musgrove going today. They could very easily close out this series today against the team that's been to the World Series 3 times since 2017.
And now that Hader is back doing, like I texted Stan last night, I said, you know, if this is Hader, if this is the way he's going to throw, the Padres can win the World Series. And their setup man is throwing really well. Suarez, I think
I think it's Suarez. Sorry.
Yeah. And so now with those two guys at the back end of your bullpen throwing really well, those guys kind of loom throughout the game where you kind of you feel like you have to get a lead by the 6th or 7th inning to have a chance to win. And that sort of creates a certain anxiety in your early at-bats, in my opinion.
Robert Suarez,
31-year-old rookie. He's out there throwing 101 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It's exciting, man. They're a fun team. You said it earlier in the show, Paul. I don't dislike the Dodgers. I never really have. But they're obviously one of those big market teams that's always in the run. And so, yeah, I mean, as a Manny Machado fan, Ryan Flaherty is, I think, their bench coach, something like that.
Yeah.
It's a fun team to root for. They've been my favorite team in the NL for a few years now. And it's exciting to see that. And you've got a back end of the bullpen that's going to be out there throwing gas and shutting hitters down. Yeah, I mean, I personally think I would be putting money on the Padres today.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to say that to root for whoever's playing the Astros and whoever's playing the Dodgers simply because one of those teams has been a World Series representative every year since 2017, and in one instance, they were both in the World Series. They were playing each other. And so this is an opportunity to see, and that's why this postseason has been so exciting, right? Because you're seeing teams that you haven't seen there or if they have been there, they haven't had the success. They're giving you reason to believe that they can make it to the World Series. And if I get, I don't know, if I get a Phillies Mariners World Series or a Padres Guardians World Series, maybe that's not what's best for baseball, but that's what's best for Paul Valley. That's what I want to see.
And that's what Paul Valley is concerned with.
Yes, I want to watch baseball that I want to watch.
Me too.
Yankees, Dodgers, yawn.
Dude,
no, thank you.
Every Division League series Division Series right now, aside from the Guardians and the Yankees, they all feature a team that has an extended playoff drought. You got the Phillies haven't been since 11. Padres, aside from the truncated 2020 season, last time they were in the playoffs, I think was 06. And then the Mariners, obviously 2001. So these are it's new blood in the playoffs, and how can you not pull for the underdogs in those situations? Right. Now, as an Orioles fan, our GM built these Houston Astros, you could argue. It kind of fires me up seeing them being so successful. And it's fun to root for them with, Trey Mancini. But on the same token, they've been to 6 straight, or they're going for their 6th straight LCS. That's too many. It won't be too many when that's the Orioles in 7 years. But I want to see some new faces in there. So I gotta pull for the underdogs.
Padres have never won a World Series. I don't believe.
Nope.
Got to 2, I think, in the Tony Gwynn era.
Yeah,
but I think they combined to win 1 game in those 2 World Series.
Right. They've never won a World Series. Guardians haven't won a World Series since 1948. The Mariners have never won a World Series. You know, the Phillies, they won one in 09, but before that, I'm sorry, in 08, but before that it was like 1980. I think was the last one. It would be very, very interesting and fun to see a team that A, hasn't been there in a while, and B, has never been there, get it done this year. So we're gonna move on to some Orioles talk, because this is an Orioles show, and we're gonna take our final break after this segment. But this is Orioles Banter, which is brought to you by the next Tyus Bowser Show, which is Tuesday, November 1st, at the Hamilton Sports Bar and Grill at 5506 Harford Road. Tyus and a special guest will join Rita and Glenn. This is your opportunity to meet Baltimore football stars while getting the inside scoop on the purple and black. The Tyus Bowser Show is a partnership of PressBox and Great 8's Memorabilia, and brought to you by Maryland Vascular Specialist and the all-new Ginsu Grill. Find out more at PressBoxOnline.com/Bowser. And if you happen to miss a Tyus Bowser Show, you can check it out Friday nights throughout the season on 105.7 The Fan. So, Orioles Banter. Where can the Orioles improve? And I think that we can all agree that for me, my list of priorities, number 1, everybody's going to say starting pitcher. For me, number 1 is a middle-of-the-order bat. Middle order of the order bat. And I don't mean somebody that comes in here and can hit 240, but hit 40 homers and strike out 210 times. I mean somebody who is a threat to get on base every time up and that strikes fear in the opposing pitcher. That's my number 1 priority. Then you could look at the starting rotation. Then you look at the bullpen, and then you need a backup catcher, and you need somebody that can play first base and give Ryan Mountcastle a blow, because Ryan Mountcastle, I think it's his first time extensively playing at first base. The hottest months of the year, July and August, were his 2 worst months of the season. He needs an opportunity to get a blow and still keep his bat in the lineup. You can potentially, there's one name out there that I know Luke is big on, that can give him that blow, and he can satisfy the middle of the order need and the guy to play first base for you when Mountcastle isn't playing. We're going to get to that. Where can the Orioles improve? Right? You look at catcher, they're set with Adley Rutschman. One of their infield positions on the left side, whether it's shortstop or third base, is going to Gunnar Henderson. And then really, you don't have – and Mountcastle is going to play first base, and he's going to hit somewhere in the middle of your lineup. And so you know that. Aside from those 3, you don't really have a clear-cut guy that you can confidently say will be there on opening day in 2023. Maybe Cedric Mullins. I think Mike Elias really likes Cedric Mullins. I think that even this was a down year for him, and he still had a really good season. So let's start, Luke. Where do you see the biggest improvement being made for the Orioles?
It's interesting that you said that a legit middle-of-the-order bat is your top priority. Would you agree with that, or for you as a top-of-the-rotation starter?
To be honest, I haven't fully digested that yet. I think they're both pretty significant priorities, but I could see arguments in either direction.
Yeah, it's interesting that I think when they drafted Heston Kjerstad, that's what they envisioned him being. Obviously, his career went sideways, and he might still be that guy. Obviously, he's having a huge Arizona Fall League right now, and I think they're still optimistic that he could be that guy in the future. It's just, what like Buck used to say, delayed but not denied. To your point, where would you like to see that middle of the order bat come from? So for me, I think the easiest way to go about that, it's hard to find a middle of the order center fielder.
Right.
That's hard to find a middle of the order shortstop. And like we were saying, like Trey Turner, it's going to cost like $250 million if you want a middle of the order shortstop.
He's more a 1-2 hitter than he is a 4 hitter.
So for me, it would probably be like more of a corner bat. So to your point, maybe like that first base DH type, or maybe it's like a right fielder. Maybe you move on from Austin Hayes. You give Anthony Santander. He's a bit lumbering in right field. Maybe he's your primary DH. And then you can give Stowers a shot in left field, and you can bring in somebody to be the right fielder.
Aaron Judge.
There you go. That's that would fit what you need, right?
Yeah.
So, and if you look at what the Astros did again, that I try to go back to what the Astros did under Lunau, Sig, Elias, because the blueprint has been roughly the same. They've changed some things. Like they haven't drafted any pitchers early. They did that with Houston. They learned their lesson there. Mm-hmm. So they've changed some things, but it's pretty much been the same blueprint.
Right.
And they brought in a guy like, and you mentioned this name, and I don't think it'll be this guy, but someone maybe like him, a Michael Brantley.
Right.
And he doesn't really fit what you were saying, like that feared middle of the order slugger. But like a corner guy like that who can play a corner outfield spot every single day.
Brantley is a guy that if you can sign that big middle of the order bat and still bring in a guy like Michael Brantley, who's getting up there in years, but he's still an elite hitter, and he's not going to hit 30 home runs a year, but he'll hit 300.
Or
but
someone like that.
But he's got to stay on the field.
Yeah, someone, I don't know, and I don't have the free agent list in front of me, but maybe the answer is to bring in a middle of the order bat who can split first base and DH with Mountcastle, and then you also bring in a corner outfielder as well, like the Astros did several years ago with Brantley, or Josh Reddick. He's another one that they did. Those are like 3-year deals. Those weren't like overly long deals. That's another thing that the Astros did. They never signed a free agent to an overly long deal. Mm-hmm. They always gave themselves outs with those deals that they didn't lock themselves into like a 7 or 8 year deal. And the big splashes that they made really came via trade.
Mm-hmm.
Garrett Cole, Zach Greinke, Justin Verlander.
Right.
Those are the big splashes that they made. Were those all? I think 2 of those were in season. One of those was off season. Cole, I think, was the off season.
Yeah.
Those were the big splashes that they made. So I sort of anticipate a similar deal here, where maybe their first huge splash comes at the trade deadline next year, where they really go get that top of the rotation starter that comes available. I don't know who's going to be what top of the rotation guy is going to be available this offseason, but those guys tend to become more available at the deadline as teams drop out of the race and things like that, like a Luis Castillo this year.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of what I anticipate happening to some degree. And I agree with you that I think Cedric is probably safe. I don't feel the same way about Austin Hayes.
Right. I don't think any of us do.
I don't know if they would outright non-tender him, but I think that they've probably been looking for ways to move on from him via trade, maybe. So, anyway,
can you envision Austin Hayes being a 4th outfielder? Is that I mean, if he's under team control, he kind of has to be okay with it.
Yeah, if he's going to make $4 million in arbitration, I don't know if they're going to want to pay that for a 4th outfielder, especially like down the stretch. Last 3 months of the season, like McKenna's production was indistinguishable, and he was actually hitting lefties better than Hayes.
Mm-hmm.
And if he's going to be a 4th outfielder, Hayes that is, like his job is going to be to hit left-handed pitching, and he wasn't doing that down the stretch.
He wasn't hitting anybody down the stretch.
Yeah, he wasn't, and it's like that was one of the issues that they had against left-handed pitching down the stretch. Like the guys that they expected to mash left-handed pitching, like Ryan Mountcastle and Austin Hayes, they weren't doing it. And if you're going to carry Austin Hayes and he's not going to hit left-handed pitching, like I'm not sure why you're carrying him. So, that's sort of how I feel about that. Now, I'm interested to hear what you say. We were talking about corner guys. Do you think they give Kyle Stowers an extended look in one of those corners?
I think
play against lefties and righties.
I think they would be stupid not to. Kyle, and Paul and I have talked about this on our podcast a bunch. Stowers not getting opportunities against lefties until that one game. It might have been the final series of the season.
It was, and he hit the home run, which was like sweet music to my ears.
He gets his first plate appearance against the lefty since the first game of his major league career, which came in the Toronto series when he was called up as a replacement for Santander. That was his only plate appearance against the lefty, and he was hit by a pitch. It was the 9th inning of an 11-1 loss. So it was
they were scared.
It was a plate appearance that didn't matter, right? This is a guy who has reverse splits in the minors, had an OPS between 900 and 1,000 against lefties each of the last 2 seasons in the minors. Better than his numbers against righties, and simply was not getting an opportunity.
Yeah,
and it made no sense to me.
For me, I was talking about this with Paul. There are no, in terms of hitters, I'm convinced there are no true talent reverse split hitters in the major leagues. Like and that's what they told you with how they were using him. That they didn't think that he was actually like a reverse split hitter in the major leagues.
And that's a fair argument, but you look at
to not give him the opportunity.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
I would have. Well, the Orioles, for me, the Orioles kind of told you what they might have thought about Stowers when they traded Trey, and they did not bring him up right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which tells me like they traded for Brett Phillips.
Yeah,
and
still mind-boggling to me.
And they held off on calling up Stowers for 3 weeks when Stowers had been in AAA at that point for like a full calendar year, and he was as ready as he was going to be. And that tells me that maybe they're lower on Stowers than the rest of us, and that maybe they're not trying to overexpose him, and that maybe he might be dealt this offseason. So when stuff like that happens, you try to read between the lines, so to speak, about how they feel about certain players. Like when Gunnar Henderson came up, he played every day.
Yeah,
Lefties, righties, they clearly see him as a massive part of their future. Like Kyle Stowers was like 24, 25 years old. And he's not, and it didn't seem to me that they were like overly eager to get him in the lineup when they had a clear opening once Trey was gone. Like, I thought that would be one of the reasons why you would trade Trey, so that you could call up Kyle Stowers and let him play every day. That's not what happened.
but this is also a guy who was the third pick taken by Mike Elias when he came to Baltimore. He shared last season's minor league player of the year award with Adley Rutschman, and the knock on him in AAA was he needs to cut back on his strikeouts. Well, he did that, and then they traded Trey Mancini, and they still didn't bring him up. They acquired Brett Phillips, which still to this day an absolutely mind-boggling move. I honestly hadn't considered that they might be trying to move him. I hope that's not the case personally. I would like to see him get an opportunity, and I think he should get that opportunity, but if they're going to bring in a corner outfielder and they're going to keep a guy like Santander around, maybe Stowers is expendable. Maybe he's a guy who gets moved for a top-of-the-line rotation. You package him with a Jordan Westberg and get a legitimate ace. I could see something like that.
I saw a lot of Stowers at Aberdeen, and he's pretty much the same player as he was then. Big-time power. It's a clear, significant uppercut.
Yeah.
And he swings really, really hard. And the problem that I've always had with Kyle is that he has no two-strike approach. He swings at everything like it's a 3-1 fastball.
Yeah, you said that to me.
And I just wonder how that's going to play. And so I just wonder how high they are on Kyle. Just
now
throwing that out there.
The original point was, and this is why we're here, right, for the roundtable, because to go off on these tangents, right? You mentioned to me, and I had talked about this for a few weeks before I saw you. Jose Abreu seems like he would be the perfect guy for the Orioles to bring in. The power was down this year,
right?
But he was still a productive hitter, still hit over 300. He's a former MVP. If you look at his numbers throughout his career, he's consistently hitting 300. 30 home runs, 100 RBIs. He's a guy that gets on base, doesn't strike out a ton. He can play first base in the pinch if you need him to. But he's one of 7 first basemen in the American League this year to play over 1,000 innings at first base. So it's not even in a pinch. He can play first base, despite the errors that we saw from him against the Orioles. Is this the guy who the Orioles make that's the big signing? It's Jose Abreu. 2-3 years at $20 million per, and you put him at the 4 slot, and he elongates your lineup.
So yeah, I mentioned Jose to you because again, I look back at what these guys did in Houston, and one of their they were a big tenet of Astro Ball is, and you saw this year a little bit, is finding the right veterans for your clubhouse. That's a big part of Astro Ball, and ironically, the right veteran for Houston at the time was Carlos Beltran, who ended up being like the ringleader of the trash can. So it's funny how that evolved. But they are very big. And again, you saw it this year with the veterans that they brought in, who they credited with helping turn around the culture of their clubhouse, and they're very big on that. And they've very carefully cultivated the culture that they want in their clubhouse, because what they took over was kind of a mess, and a lot of things needed to be rebuilt in the organization. The clubhouse was, I think, one of them, and they've done a nice job with that. I just think that, like, Jose Abreu, based on what these guys did in Houston, would kind of fit, kind of check a lot of those boxes about the kind of veteran that they like, that the professional that they would want. And he's a guy who I think would be an unbelievable influence on Ryan Mountcastle. Yeah. An unbelievable influence on the Latin guys and the younger Latin guys in the clubhouse as well. Just like, I think he would be, I would think he would be a great fit in that regard. You mentioned that the power is down. He would not be coming to a friendly park for right-handed hitters.
Sure.
And maybe he's just not interested in that. And that could be the case. It could also be the case that the White Sox don't want to lose him, and they pay him 2 years, $30 million, and that's that. So, and there are some other corner guys that we talked about, Jack Peterson being one of them. I know you're a little lower on him than seemingly a lot of Orioles fans on Twitter who are very high on Jack Peterson.
I don't get that either, personally.
Okay.
I'm not a big Jock guy.
And so, I don't know, is there anybody...
Yeah, we know that about you.
So...
Damn. All right.
Boom. Got him. Got him.
We wrapping this up soon? That was good. That was good.
Do you have anyone on your list that you like?
I do. Abreu, I think, is a great option. Whether or not he ends up actually hitting free agency and not coming back to the White Sox on a smaller deal, I think is yet to be determined. My guy has a similar profile, a little more power, a little less average. Josh Bell. He's a guy in the postseason right now. He fits that first base DH mold. Not great defensively. He used to play a little corner outfield, but you probably don't want him out there. But I look at Josh Bell. Since being traded to the Padres, he's been in the worst slump of his career. He's always been a streaky hitter. However, you look at his batted ball profile, it's still very good. And you look at what he's done since going to San Diego. He started the season in D.C. On pace for by far the best season in his career. Came to San Diego, massive slump. Despite this terrible slump he's gone through, his on-base percentage with San Diego is .316. That's despite a 192 batting average. This is a guy who, even when he's not hitting the ball, he's going to get on base. Now, I look at...
Not a big strikeout guy either.
No, not a big strikeout guy. Career .351 on base. That's very good. Now, I look at what the Orioles did in the on-base percentage department this season. Adley Rutschman, .362. Trey Mancini, .347. He's gone. Gunnar Henderson, .348 in a small sample size. Vavra, .340. After that, Cedric Mullins and Anthony Santander were both .318. Josh Bell would be right behind them with his .316, which is the worst portion of his career. I still think he's got a lot of good baseball in him. When he's on, he's one of the scariest hitters in the game.
He's huge.
Yeah. Big switch hitting power hitter. I think he profiles well at Camden Yards. He's a guy I think they could get, and especially after this extended slump in San Diego, I think his price tag's come down a little bit. I see him as a good fit personally, and a good guy to spell.
You know, it'd be interesting if they had 3 switch hitters in the middle of their lineup with Adley, Santander, and Bell. That would make them very difficult to pitch to late in the game for managers to match up against, unless all of them are like having like the same splits in 1 year. Right. Like I know Santander was strong from both sides of the plate this year. Yeah. Adley was obviously much stronger from the left side this year, but he's never been a huge splits guy, so I think that's probably randomness. And so I don't know about Bell. I don't know what side he's typically stronger from.
I'm pulling that up now.
So
you imagine it would be the left side. I mean, I don't know though. He hits the most from the left side because he's
right.
You know, so you understand that. But Anthony Santander hit at one point late in the year. He was hitting .298 right-handed, compared to like
and that
220.
was one of the things that. One of the many things he improved on this year. The swing decisions got a lot better. The approach got a lot better. He was healthy for the entire year. There was like stories about like he improved his diet, improved his body, and all that good stuff.
He looked like he was absolutely cut up when I saw him.
I still think that he might be an ascending hitter. And so I know he's climbing the arbitration ladder at this point. I know MLB Trade Rumors had Santander at 7.5 But I suspect that they'll bring him back because I think that, the indicators for Santander, he's still only 27, 28 years old. The indicators for me say that he's still an ascending hitter. He's still a hitter that could get better.
Switch hitter with power from both sides of the plate.
Hard to find.
My only issue with him is that he walked more this year, but the walks were really down in the second half.
Yep.
And he ended the year batting .240. And this is a guy that they bat consistently in the middle of their lineup.
He hit third every day.
Yeah, he hit third every day batting, and he finished the year batting .240. If he's going to – I'd rather see him right around 260 and bat him sixth.
I was just about to say that on a better team, like if you're a team that's going to win 95 games, you want him batting like sixth.
Yeah. And when you talk about Josh Bell is a guy who I've thought about a lot too, and he's younger. He's 30 years old. He's a switch hitter, power from both sides. That's a guy you could put in the middle of your lineup. And what I'm concerned about the most and why I think that they really need a legitimate middle of the order bat is because that the top of your order next year is probably going to be Mullins, Rutschman, Henderson to start, right? And then your cleanup hitter, it can't be Mountcastle and it can't be Santander. It's got to be that guy, guy that you bring in, because then you bat Mountcastle fifth. And it's do you want to pitch to Gunnar? Do you want to pitch to whoever the four hitter is? Do you want to pitch to Mountcastle and then you have Santander protecting him? Mountcastle's peripherals were off the charts this year. His expected WOBA, his expected batting average, his hard hit rate, his barrel rate.
Had a bad luck year.
He had a really these were all elite. And his numbers suggest he should have had a better season this year than he did in his rookie of the year campaign. Didn't win it, obviously, but he was up there. Suggests he should have had a better year, and he had a worse year statistically. I think you bring in that one guy in the middle of the order, and Mountcastle takes off next year.
I agree. I think Mountcastle's going to have a big year next year. And that was actually, I'm jealous of your take, because that was one that I had stored, but then you said it anyway. So you look, aside from the approach, and the approach is not great. That's been discussed ad nauseum. Other than that, he does every single thing that you want a hitter to do in terms of hitting the ball hard.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, for whatever reason, and the dimensions changing, that had something to do with it. But he should have had a better year. And I think that next year he has a big year.
Yeah. Right.
I agree. You look at the batted ball profile for him, kind of like I said with Josh Bell, despite the struggles, still really good peripheral numbers. And Mountcastle's 25. I think he's only going to continue to get better, and he's going to stay in the lineup too. As long he's playing, I don't want to say stellar, but yeah.
He's turned himself into a very nice first baseman.
If you look at the numbers, and I mentioned those 7 guys. Not to interrupt you,
no, you're fine.
I mentioned those 7 guys that played over 1,000 innings at first base in the American League this year. He was the best rated defender out of all of them.
Yeah,
the best rated defender out of all of them. So that glove's playing. The bat we know can play.
Now, first defensive metrics hate first baseman. Mm-hmm. That's pretty well documented. If you look at Ryan Mountcastle's defensive metrics in a vacuum, it's not going to look great. But if you look at it compared to the other first baseman, he's one of the best, easily.
Yeah, and he's proven me wrong, because I thought that he was a guy that with his defensive skill set, he wasn't going to be good anywhere.
Oh, me too.
Because he's got kind of heavy feet. He's got not great hands. But he's really improved at first base since last year. Really, and last year, when his bat really took off when they just gave him first base, when they stopped messing around with left field. Funny, the first thing that I thought of when the fences went back, I was like, I guess that's it for the Ryan Mountcastle left field experiment. But long story short, I expect Ryan to have a better year, and he should have had a better year this year. It's just tough luck, and there are 29 other teams who would love to take a shot on Ryan Mountcastle and try to improve that approach and that pitch ID stuff and swing decisions and all that good stuff, because when he connects with the ball, there's nobody on the team that's better.
He hit 250 this year. His expected batting average was 277. His expected on base percentage was like 356. Yeah. He just hit into some crazy bad luck, and those things tend to turn. Yeah. Those things tend to turn for you. Usually happens in season, but
sometimes 162 games isn't enough. Yeah. Sometimes 162 games is a small sample in baseball. As strange as it sounds, sometimes it takes multiple seasons.
Absolutely. Now, A.K. Mukherjee, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He comments on the show every week. He said he offered up a trade. Stowers, Diaz. I don't think Diaz is getting you anything, but Stowers, Diaz, Vavra, and Hayes for Giolito.
Stan has brought up Giolito's name to me.
He has to me also.
As kind of like a buy low opportunity. I would have to look more into Giolito. He had a down year this year. Now, in terms of Diaz, I still kind of like his physical tools, but at this point, it's been like 4 years since he was like any sort of top prospect.
Yeah, and you can't say healthy.
And honestly, I would be surprised if he survived the winter on the 40-man. Like, he just seems like a guy who kind of his time has come in that regard. But he's still got some physical tools. And then the other guys that you mentioned, Vavra
and Hayes for Giolito. I think you're gonna have to throw in a pitcher there if you're gonna get Giolito.
Yeah. And I don't know who that pitcher would be. It would come down to like who their metrics like, like their proprietary metrics like in the Orioles organization. But I wouldn't hate Giolito as like a buy low opportunity, and you start him as like your number 4 starter, because he was like really good in 21, right?
Yeah, really good. He was my pick to win the Cy Young in 2021.
But the Chicago probably looks at him as a buy low for themselves too. That,
right.
If he bounces back and if they don't have a great year next year, they could flip him at the deadline.
They're going to
It's just hard to execute trades.
They're going to have a new manager coming in. They're going to have a healthy lineup. They suppose that they're going to have a healthy lineup next year. They were really beat up this year. Maybe Giolito is a guy who they think can turn it around if they bring in the right manager, the right player development type of manager.
See what Liam Hendricks was saying after the season? He was like, he basically said that they need more of a hard ass as the manager, and he was like, the quality of art, and they had some defensive issues this year, which we saw in the series here in Baltimore. And he said that their defense was so bad that it changed the way he pitched in the 9th inning because he would try to strike guys out more than he should, rather than just letting his stuff play and whatever happens. So that was interesting.
AJ also said, he is no dumb jock, love jock, talking about Jock Peterson. Who cares what Mr. Host says? Taking a little stab at me. And then finally, I do want to talk a little bit about backup. Well, first off, and we'll do this real quick, the main guys, Turner, Correa, Swanson, Bogarts, Rodon, Judge, are the Orioles players for any of those guys?
Do you think they explore any of them?
I
think they pick up the phone.
I think they do their due diligence. Whether or not they open up the wallet for one of the real big name free agents, I don't know. We talked about it before. We don't know what liftoff looks like yet. So I have Carlos Rodon high on my wish list. I don't know how attainable that is.
So, I think he's going to get more than Gossman got, and I think he's going to get more than Ray got.
He led the National League in strikeouts
this year.
And
both those guys got like 5, 115, 120 in that range. I think he's going to get more than that. And,
I think so, too.
If there's any of those guys, for me, still Carlos Correa, I think Mike will be I think Mike will check in on him. I think Mike will see what the price on Correa is. Oh, that's his guy.
Especially if Correa is willing to play second base, which he has said he would do. I think that's a great fit.
I mean, I would maybe second base as he ages. Like I would think that you would bring him in to play shortstop, and then you have Gunnar at third.
I think so too.
And so like, and you think about it, you look at a lot of these contenders that are still alive. How many of them don't get anything offensively out of catcher, don't get anything out offensively out of shortstop? Like, think of the advantage the Orioles could have if they had Rushman behind the plate and Correa at short. That would be an incredible advantage
absolutely.
against a lot of teams. So that's, for me, that's something that you have to explore.
Yeah, I do think that Elias, doing his job, picked up the phone on all those guys.
Yep.
He checks in on all of them. He wouldn't be doing his job if he didn't, right? That said, again, like we've all said, we don't know what liftoff looks like.
Yep.
I did say he's checked every box he said he was going to check. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that he's going to do something big this offseason. I don't know what big looks like in terms of is big Correa or Judge, or is big Josh Bell or Jose Abreu.
Yeah, Mike has done what he was hired to do.
Yeah,
to this point, he is
absolutely.
He is slashed the major league payroll while rebuilding the organization from top to bottom and putting them in a situation where they could be successful for years to come this decade. So he's done what he was hired to do. And now we get to see what liftoff looks like. Yeah. And so I'm really looking forward to to that and seeing which guys on the roster right now they really believe in, because the answer might surprise us.
Colton Cowser he mashed at AA this year, gets to AAA, started off slow, struggle, came on towards the end there. How big is he a part of the plan next year, and how early is he a part of the plan next year?
I saw a lot of Cowser at Aberdeen. I probably saw him like 7, 8, 9 times. He struggled a little bit, particularly early in his time at Aberdeen with picking up breaking balls. And a wise man once said, don't panic if a 22-year-old struggles to pick up breaking balls in the minor leagues. Like, it'll happen. But it was just a little surprising in that, you know, when he was drafted as a guy with like a really polished hit tool. And it didn't necessarily look like that at Aberdeen. Aberdeen is also a place that is very difficult to hit in. And Bowie is not. Bowie is a hitter-friendly park. And you saw that with Norby as well. So with Cowser, I would imagine that, see, if they hold on to Stowers, if they don't move him, maybe they give Stowers a trial in left field, and if it doesn't work out, they can bring up Cowser midway through the season to play left field, maybe. And I would be interested to know if internally they think of Cowser as their center fielder of the future.
Which makes me wonder, and I've been saying this for a while now, because of his arm. I think Cedric Mullins has to move to left field.
And the bat doesn't play in left for me. So Cedric is going to make 4.5 in arbitration this year, something like that, according to MLB trade rumors. Beyond that, I don't see them getting into the weeds of arbitration with Cedric after that.
No. You think his days are numbered?
Yes-ish.
Yes-ish.
Yes-ish in the sense that I think he's here next year. I think that over the next 2 years, the only guys who are safe are Henderson and Rutschman. That's it.
Yeah.
Those are, to me, there are only 2 untouchables in the entire organization. It's those 2.
I kind of look at it the same.
Because even
Grayson Rodriguez,
he's a pitcher.
Yeah.
And so he's not going to move. But if like Shohei Ohtani was on the table and he was this offseason in a trade and he was willing to talking about an extension, I would tell Grayson Rodriguez to have fun in Southern California. You know what I mean? That's what I mean. Like, so, for me, there's only 2 untouchables in the entire organization.
And that's fair. The 2 number 1 overall prospects of the last year. That makes a lot of sense. Man, this was fun. It's
too.
It's almost 12:30.
We have time to get into pitching or? Too much. I have one bullpen name I wanted to throw out there.
Oh, bullpen name.
Yeah,
we're getting into the weeds here.
Because you talked about you want another guy or 2 in the bullpen who you're confident in.
I do. I'm only confident in Bautista. When I say confident they'll be back, and that's Bautista, CNL Perez, and Brian Baker. I'm not positive.
Baker was their best reliever from September 1 on.
I'm not positive that even Dylan Tate is back. I think he could be a trade candidate this
He's in
offseason.
arbitration now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My name is he's in the playoffs right now. You can go out and watch him.
Evan
He's
Phillips.
pitched a lot.
I want him back.
He texted me about Evan Phillips last night. His numbers are stupid. What?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
How does that happen?
He's like the 3rd or 4th best reliever in baseball by FWAR.
He grew up as an Orioles fan.
Yeah,
that was a great get by Dan in those trades. Like he had Dean Kramer was a good get, Evan Phillips was a great get, and then Dylan Tate was a good get. And so, anyway, continue.
We don't have to get into a discussion about relief pitching. You can look up the numbers yourselves, but Rafael Montero is a guy I have my eye on. Look at his Savant page. It's a ton of red. Doesn't give up a lot of hard contact at all. Strikes out enough guys to be a dominant reliever. It pitched to a 2.37 ERA this year. I don't have his baseball reference page in front of me, but I believe his FIP was even lower than that. Expected ERA 2.70. So
2.64 FIP.
Okay, all right. I mean that'll play. That's a really good bullpen arm. Go out and watch him pitch for the Astros. 4-seam sinker combination, two distinctly different moving fastballs. Got a changeup and a slider that he mixes in a reasonable amount as well. It's hard to find a good 4-pitch reliever. I think Rafael Montero could be the guy, and I'm comfortable signing him and throwing him in the 8th inning immediately.
I got a little bit of time. You guys got a little bit of time?
Why not?
Sure.
All right. We don't have to stay too long, but I do want to talk about the pitching because you just reminded me of some stuff that I have in the notes, and that's.
Well, let me get my phone real quick. I'll be right back.
He's gonna grab his phone real quick, but it's DL Hall. You know what? While he's doing that, let's take our break.
Sure.
Let's take our break because we got to come back, do Take the Rake. I got one more read to do. When we come back, we'll finish Orioles banter. We'll do Take the Rake and then try and get out of here in a reasonable manner. Zach will be losing his mind right now to know that we had one more break and another segment to do, and it's 12:30.
Are we calling him for Take the Rake?
No, he's in the middle of a golf tournament, and
right.
He's been taking golf very seriously, so I want to give him the opportunity to not have to be bothered with that. So we're going to catch our final break here. When we come back, finish up Orioles banter, Take the Rake, and then we'll get on out of here. That next on the Better Round.
The Baltimore County Police Department is hiring. Entry-level officers start at close to $59,000 a year with a $10,000 bonus. Some restrictions apply. Plus a great retirement plan, medical, dental, and vision insurance, advancement to specialized units, tuition reimbursement, 15 sick days earned per calendar year, and even further incentives for military members and veterans. If you have a passion for service and want a career for life, visit joinbaltimorecountypd.com or call 410-887-5542. You must be a United States citizen, possess a valid driver's license, and have a high school diploma or GED equivalent. The Baltimore County Police Department is an equal opportunity employer.
Come experience Maryland's #1 sportsbook this NFL season at the FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel, the ultimate place for any sports enthusiast. Take advantage of our 24/7 kiosks, massive video screens, and watch all the action from the best seat in the house. With more money paid out than anyone around, make every moment more at the new FanDuel Sportsbook at Live Casino and Hotel in Hanover, Maryland. Please play responsibly. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit mdgamblinghelp.org.
Whether your focus is luxury and comfort, convenience and technologically advanced connectivity, or sporty performance and aggressive styling, we've got the perfect Highlander for you. Check out buyatoyota.com for deals on new Highlanders from your local Toyota dealer today.
Glory Days Grill's Oktoberfest menu is now running. It's one of their most popular seasonal menus all year. It features the chicken schnitzel, the Oktoberfest brewer's platter, the brewer's sausage sandwich, the Bavarian burger with a pretzel bun, the cheddar ale soup, the slam dunk pretzels, and the apple cobbler. All of these meals pair well with Oktoberfest beers and Angry Orchard on draft. Dine in or order online at glorydaysgrill.com and pick up your favorites to take home. Glory Days Grill, great food, good sports.
That first sip. That first bite. Start your day off right with a delicious breakfast at Royal Farms. Choose from a fantastic selection of fresh Royal Farms breakfast sandwiches and top it off with a rich hot cup of the freshest coffee in the world. At Royal Farms, breakfast is available day and night. It's the freshest breakfast in the world. Real fresh, real fast. Royal Farms.
Have you been to Guilford Hall Brewery? Located in Baltimore's Station North neighborhood, Guilford Hall Brewery breaks the craft brew mold with their great handcrafted microbrews and amazing Bavarian-style food selections. Join Guilford Hall 7 days a week for Orioles, Ravens, and all of your favorite college games. Make plans now to watch the big games, play trivia, or bring your dog for Yappy Hour. They even have free valet service on Friday and Saturday nights. Go to guilfordhall.com for a complete schedule of events, beer listings, and food and drink specials. We'll see you at Guilford Hall Brewery.
The latest edition of PressBox is available now. On the cover, Bo Smolka profiles Ravens tight end Mark Andrews' path to NFL stardom, from his late decision to play the sport full-time through having to overcome type 1 diabetes and more. Also, inside, we introduce you to football players at Maryland, Navy, Towson, and Morgan State. And we give you everything you need to know for betting football this season. PressBox is available for free at over 500 area locations, including 60 Royal Farm stores. And you can always find the entire edition, as well as the best daily coverage of the demos, Ravens, and Terps at PressBoxOnline.com.
See Olympic athletes in action as the nation's best horses and riders compete in one of the world's premier equestrian events at the Mars Maryland 5-Star at Fair Hill, presented by Brown Academy, October 13th through 16th in Cecil County. Don't miss the breathtaking excitement of the dynamic cross-country competition or the elegance of dressage and precision of show jumping. There's also great shopping and activities, including a fresh food fest, corgi race, and a beer, wine, and spirits showcase. So come enjoy a beautiful fall day at the Mars Maryland 5-Star at Fair Hill, presented by Brown Advisory, October 13th through 16th. Learn more and buy tickets at maryland5star.us.
All right, welcome back to the Bat Around, the extended version of the Bat Around, because we get talking baseball and we just love it so much that it kind of just takes off. Today's show brought to you by the former show of this music, Glenn Clark Radio. PressBox Glenn Clark Radio is the definitive place to find the best daily discussion of Baltimore sports. Watch the show every weekday from 10 to noon at youtube.com/PressBoxOnline or facebook.com/PressBoxSports. Or listen at PressBoxOnline.com/radio with podcasts available on iTunes, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. You have no excuse to not listen or watch the show with all the ways to get it. You never know who might pop up on GCR. This week, the guys caught up with Ravens offensive lineman Kevin Zeitler, CBS analyst Charles Davis before he calls Ravens Giants, longtime ESPN personality Trey Wingo, and more. Find those interviews and more in the Glenn Clark Radio Week in Review feature at PressBoxOnline.com. Orioles banter continues here as we talk about the Orioles' future pitching prospects as far as what they're going to have in their starting rotation next year, what they're going to have in their bullpen. For me, I look at their rotation for next year, and I think that Kramer, Bradish, and Grayson Rodriguez are the guys who have locked down a spot. I think that they want to stretch out Tyler Wells and DL Hall and give them an opportunity at the rotation. I do think that they're going to pick up the option on Jordan Lyles.
You do? Okay.
Because it's $11 million. He gave you 180 innings. He had a better year this year than he did last year. And
it's a reasonable price for someone who does what he does, considering that Morton signed for $20 million next year. Like, veteran starting pitching is very expensive.
What he's going to get in the open market is going to be more than what you're going to pay him next year.
And I think they will pick it up if they think they can move it at some point. Like if they get into spring training and they're uncomfortable with the amount of starters that they have for some reason, and do they think they could move that 1 year $11 million? And really, it's a $1 million buyout on it, so it's a $10 million decision.
Yeah. And then you also have, before you even get to those guys, you have Means coming back probably by the beginning to middle of June. I could see them holding him back till after the All-Star break.
Yeah, it seems like for most guys it's a 12 to 15 month process, and guys are better off if it's more toward the 15-month mark.
And the reports suggest he has been ahead of schedule. Right, but I still, the Orioles have slow played a lot of things. Just look at what happened with Adley.
They take care of their
Gunnar.
arms,
and with Grayson and DL Hall. I think that they'd be wise to hold him till probably after the All-Star break, and then he can kind of be a deadline acquisition like what you talked about, right? Then you have Voth. You have Spencer Watkins. Michael Ballman held his own, was serviceable down the stretch there. I think that those guys might end up. Watkins, I think that he's a DFA candidate. But I think Voth and Ballman could end up being swing guys in your bullpen. Ballman maybe a back end type of guy that they've talked about in the past as far as he goes. What does your rotation look like next year? And we're assuming they're going to bring in somebody, whether free agency or trade, for that rotation as well.
I think that they believe in Tyler Wells as a starter. I think it's clear that they do. So I think they'll give him every opportunity to win a rotation spot. And so for me, I think Kyle Bradish was about 110, 115 innings this year.
Sure.
Kramer, because he got hurt early in the year, was at about 125 innings.
Yeah, it's right where he was.
Yeah, and then Wells, I think, was around 110, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have a computer right in front of me. It's go time for those guys.
Yeah.
They're at the age where they're like 26, 27, 28 years old. It's go time for those guys to show that they can pitch 160 to 180 innings in a major league season and stay healthy from start to finish. It's go time. And so it's a big year next year for those three guys to show that they can do that. And based on what Mike Elias has said multiple times on the record, Grayson Rodriguez is going to be in this rotation as well.
Absolutely.
So I think those four guys, I'm 50-50 on whether they pick up the option on Lyles. Probably more if I'm leaning anyway, it's not picking up they don't pick it up. But I understand what you're thinking as well, that you could pick it up now and you can move it later on if you wanted to. So I think, but for me right now, I think their opening day rotation will be the three guys that I mentioned. Grayson, and then so their opening day starter will be someone who's not in the organization right now.
Yeah, I have to agree. I'm also kind of 50-50 on Lyles. I think I lean more toward pick it up.
Okay.
I don't think you can have too much starting pitching, and especially if it is a contract they think they could move. I don't see much of a risk there.
Mm-hmm.
He was your big innings guy this year. Kramer was at 125. You're right about that. Bradish 117. Wells 103. So not far off there. I think I agree that they view Wells as a starter. He was a starter in his entire minor league career before being taken in the Rule 5 draft, and a lot of Rule 5 guys spend their first year in the bullpen anyway before returning to a starting role. So I think Wells will be given every opportunity. Austin Voth pitched his way into consideration.
I see him more of a swingman. What do you think?
I realistically, yes. But he did pitch very well after coming over here, and if they think they found something there, I think they'll give him an opportunity to win a rotation spot.
I tell you what, his curveball is the best pitch on the staff other than whatever Felix is throwing.
His spin rates are elite.
I mean, his curveball is like amazing.
It's really, really good. I do think he is best served as a swingman, but based on how he pitched since he came here, I think he'll be at least given an opportunity. Whether or not he cracks the opening day rotation, I'm not sure, especially if they do pick up that option on Lyles and they bring in a free agent, which I think they will do. So, maybe better served as a swingman kind of guy. Same with Bauman. He showed me a lot of potential this year. I'm kind of hoping he follows a similar trajectory to what Bradish and Kramer did, where it was, he's got good stuff, but he needs to hone in on the command and learn how to really attack hitters.
I was a little confused about how they handled Bauman this year because I know why they sent him down in the first place. Like, he cracked the opening day roster, but then he really struggled to throw strikes, and so they sent him down to Norfolk. And then after that, he was kind of buried down there. And I thought he was a better arm than a lot of the guys they had in the spots 7 and 8 of the bullpen throughout the year. He's a better arm than Bo Sulser. He's a better arm than Jake Reed. He's a better arm than who was the other guy that they just
Lewis Head.
He's a better arm than Lewis Head. And they had him in the bullpen in Norfolk, and then they moved him into the rotation at Norfolk, and then they brought him up, and then he finished the year in the rotation in Baltimore. So I don't know what their plan is for him. For me, he's a better arm than a lot of the guys they had in the bullpen this year.
No, I agree. And I sent out a tweet the other day where I said, it was kind of a bold prediction for 2023 that Bauman is next year's Kramer/Bradish. Bauman, I don't think necessarily has the same stuff as those two guys. He's more of a fastball slider type. He needs to work on his secondary pitches a little bit more. But someone who responded to that tweet was Ryan Ripken. And he said that, and who would know this better than a former teammate who I'm sure he stays in communication with, that this year was really tough on him. Moving up and down, back and forth, never had a defined role, and it's been that way for him the last couple seasons, and that's not easy on a pitcher.
Right.
We saw it with Kevin Gausman, who was on the Norfolk shuttle for it seemed like 2 years, and then was able to settle into a spot. He pitched well for the Orioles in the playoff run, and then ended up going elsewhere. And now that he's found a regular routine as a starter, he's turned himself into a damn good pitcher. Is Bauman capable of that? I don't know, but I'd like to see him get a shot. With that being said, I think he fits well in the bullpen if they don't go out and sign a Rafael Montero type. I think Bauman is an upgrade over those three guys you mentioned who were DFA'd. I think there's a role for him on this team. I don't feel the same about Bruce Zimmerman. He's a name that's kind of
for me. He's a DFA.
Yeah, I agree.
He's a name that has been kind of forgotten about. It seems supposed to kind of step in when John Means got hurt, and he was so bad.
He did
was
for 5 starts, and then
and then he pitched so badly that he got sent down to Norfolk, where he pretty much spent the rest of the year.
Yeah, he was not good. I think there was a point where he gave up 17 home runs in 5 starts.
Yeah, it was in 14 innings. He gave up 17 homers.
And the stuff's just not. It's not good enough.
He doesn't have a big league fastball. He doesn't have any out pitches. Decent changeup, but
I always liked his curveball, but it was really the only pitch.
They didn't throw enough. I didn't think.
Yeah.
I felt like he never threw that enough, but they've maxed out his velocity.
Yeah.
I think that we've seen probably the last of him.
Yeah, I think we've probably seen the last of Spencer Watkins too. Although if they bring him in, then they have nine rotation options in spring training plus whoever they bring in.
I think
trade
Watkins
or free agency
will be. I think he's got options too.
Yeah,
he's
got
a nice
options.
guy to have in Norfolk who can come up and give you a competitive start. He's one of those guys. He's got a good spin rate on his fastball and whatever. But and heck, he cut his ERA in half this year.
Yeah.
So I suspect that he'll remain on the roster. I don't know why he wouldn't.
Well, he was DFA'd last year in the off season to make room. If they DFA him this year, he can become a free agent if he so chooses.
And he'll have options.
Yeah, and he'll have options. So that could be something they do for the betterment of him because if there's 9 guys, he's probably guy number 9 for the rotation realistically.
Yeah.
Number 3 starter for the Nationals.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. I think I could be a number 3 starter for the Nationals at this point. I'm probably pitching tomorrow. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting. The Orioles are going to have more starting rotation candidates than I ever remember them having in spring
legitimate
training.
Candidates.
Like legitimate starting rotation candidates.
Not like Mike Wright.
Right.
Like,
Right.
Oh, he's in rotation. Okay.
Mike
Right.
Wright, Tyler Wilson.
Wilson.
That was a ride.
Yeah, right. Wilson did have that 1 7-inning shutout against the Red Sox up in Boston. I remember that back in 2016.
If I remember correctly, it was that was at a time of need for the Orioles because Kevin Gossman had gotten thrown out for hitting the guy with a curveball the night prior. And they burned through their bullpen to get through that game. And
I remember that.
Called up Tyler Wells, and he gave him this great start on like a moment's notice.
Was that the Jordan Baker game?
Yes.
Or was that because he threw out Ubaldo as well, right? Ubaldo had a no-hitter in Toronto in the 4th inning, and then he hit a guy, and Baker threw him out immediately.
It might have been because
I remember
Jordan Baker's a good umpire. It's just that he was a young guy at the time.
Yeah,
and he was like really overly enthusiastic, but like, he's a good umpire. He's in the playoffs right now.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting and with the free agents and the trades that they make. Hopefully this offseason to bring in some more starters. They could have legitimately double figures as legitimate rotation candidates. So going to be a fun offseason for sure. This was absolutely a blast today. AJ said, great having Luke on the panel today. I agree. I think we should do this more often throughout the season. Maybe just do a show where we just do this for 2 hours because that's so much fun. And he also said, and Mr. Host is not Paul, it's Zach's sub-in.
I did say I was not a jock guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't do it
I
for
said
me.
I wasn't a jock guy either, though. So you said you weren't a big jock guy, and we all were like, ah.
He's a streaky hitter who can't hit lefty. He's a streaky platoon hitter. I don't see a ton of value there. And
this year he was like a 270 hitter. He hit over 30 homers, drove in a bunch. He had if you're looking at kind of the archaic stats, he had a good year.
He also doesn't walk. Doesn't he have like a 320 on base?
Yeah, he strikes out a lot and doesn't walk a ton. So
does he not play against lefties? Is he just like unplayable against lefties? Is he one of those guys?
That I don't know. I feel like his numbers would suggest that he played against everybody. But
he did have a 353 on base this year, so I did not realize that. So a little more credit to him.
I know that. Yeah.
Okay.
The swing kind of fits Camden Yards.
Yeah,
it does.
I mean, I wouldn't hate it. He's not high on my priority list.
Jock Peterson is one of those guys that you could see them bringing in because they really want to put an emphasis on left-handed batters in this stadium, and all their top prospects. I mean, Rutschman bats mainly from the left side because he's a switch hitter, and they face a ton of righties. Jackson Holliday, Gunnar Henderson, Colton Cowser. These are all left-handed batters. And so I think that this is.
Drafted Kerstedt too, left-handed hitter.
Yeah, exactly. And we always forget about Holiday because he just got drafted and he only played it like.
And honestly, that's good for Holiday because the hype and the expectations for Rutschman were just too much in my opinion, and he managed to exceed them, but they were unfair, totally unfair. And I think this is a lot more fair for Holiday that he's simply now part of the organization.
Yeah,
and the weight of the world isn't on him, and that's.
Yeah,
anyway.
I mean,
but Rutschman handled it because he handles everything.
He really does. He is incredible in every facet. He's just an incredible ball player, an incredible human being. Now, we've got to move on to Take the Rake real quick before we get to the end of the show here. So the way we do it in the postseason is we each take 2 players. You can do one from usually once we get to the DS, you can do one from the American League, one from the National League. But because we had the wild card round and the DS intertwined in the last week, we could just take 2 players each. So Zach took Bryce Harper and Aaron Judge. So you had to take a player that played in the wild card for one of your picks and a player that is playing in the ALDS for the other. He took Bryce Harper and Aaron Judge. So Harper went 8 for 18, 2 home runs, 4 RBIs, 2 walks. Judge 0 for 8, 7 Ks. I took Yordan Alvarez and George Springer. Alvarez 4 for 8, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs, 1 walk. George Springer 2 for 7, 3 Ks. I think I win.
Yep.
I think I win. The similar numbers from Harper and Alvarez, but Alvarez did more damage with less at bats.
Were you watching Game 1 of the Astros series?
Mm-hmm.
Did you feel that home run coming?
It's funny. I was at work, and I saw him up, and it was 1-1.
He was looming the entire inning.
Yeah,
and he was due up 5th, and you were like, if you get to 5th in this, like, you're going to lose this game.
I'm watching it, and I see him at the plate. And it's 1-1, It's a 1-1 count. I think he hit the home run on the 1-1 pitch. And
so I think it was an 0-1 count because
there was definitely at least one ball on there.
Okay, because I remember the first pitch was a fastball and he was right on it. He fouled it off, and he didn't go to a breaking ball. He went back to the fastball. Okay.
Well, I'm looking at it and I'm like, and I see two guys, and when I see two outs, I see it's Alvarez, and I'm like, oh, he's gonna hit a walk-off homer. And then I went and I had to take care of a table, and then I got busy. I checked my phone later. On the very next pitch, as soon as I turned away and walked away, he hit the walk-off 3-run homer. So I missed it live, but I saw it, and I was like, that happened literally right after I said he's hitting the walk-off, walked away, there it goes. So I won for Take the Rake. So what we're going to do here is, Luke, you're going to pick, Ryan, you're going to pick, because I won, I pick first. So we each pick 2 players. Now it's 1 player from the American League, 1 player from the National League. What you have to do here is you have to be smart. You have to pick a player that you think is going to play beyond the wild card round. I mean, beyond the division series.
Yeah.
Now, so you'd be smart to take Bryce Harper, right? Because they're up 2-1 and he's hot now. But if they lose the next 2 games, then you don't have his bat production for the next week.
Okay.
Right. So think of it on those terms. So I'm looking at it, and I also, since you're filling in for Zach, you can't take Bryce Harper and you can't take Aaron Judge.
That's fine.
I can't take Alvarez, and I can't take Springer's out. So and I can't take Alvarez, right? So for my pick, my first pick is going to be. I don't want to take anybody from the Padres-Dodgers series because I really don't know who's going to win that series. I'll take Aaron Judge because I think the Yankees are going to win that series, and I think that he's going to get hot. So I'll take Aaron Judge in the American League. In the National League...
Oh, you get both picks. I thought this was going to, snake or something.
No.
All right, so you get your first... Okay, I got you.
And in the National League, I'm going to take... Those are both 2-1 series. You really don't know who's going to do what. Give me... I'm doing it. I'm taking Freddie Freeman. I left him on the board. I think the Dodgers are going to come back. I'm taking Freddie Freeman.
Okay.
That was stupid. They're going to lose today. That was stupid. But I've spoken. All right.
Musgrove on the hill, San Diego boy, pitching his team into the NLCS.
Yeah, I know.
Pretty cool.
So
I can't believe I just did that. I'm so mad that I just did that.
Hey, you locked it in. Who picks next, me or Luke?
We're going to let Luke pick since he's the guest.
Go for it.
You're both guests, but he's the guest.
Yeah.
I mentioned before in the show that Jose Altuve hasn't gotten hot yet. So I'm going to go with Altuve.
Okay.
And I also mentioned that if this guy gets hot, then the Phillies can win the entire thing. And that's Kyle Schwarber. So I'm going with Jose Altuve and Kyle Schwarber.
I like those picks.
I can't believe I left Bryce Harper on the board. I'm so mad at myself.
I was thinking about Altuve. As inclined as I am to take Bryce Harper, my National League pick is going to go to a Padre who has not been super hot. He's a very good hitter, but flew out to the warning track twice last night. I think he's going to find a groove. I think the Padres advance. I'm taking Juan Soto.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
The American League, I'm a little less sure of. I was thinking Altuve for the Astros. I definitely want to take an Astros hitter. Jordan's off the table. Altuve's off. I will take Alex Bregman. I don't really have any...
Jordan's not off the table. He's off the table for me. He's not off the table for you.
Oh, all right.
I'd go with Jordan.
Yeah, give me Jordan. Sorry. I don't know why I thought you had taken him. That's
right.
You took him last week. Yeah,
I
okay.
screwed myself. I told you to take Alvarez, and I picked Freddie Freeman, who might not play after today.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
All right, so
it is what it is.
Soto and Jordan.
It is what it is. Damn it. Go Dodgers. All right, guys. Great show. We usually close these shows in the fall to talking about the Ravens. We don't have to get too far into it. I think they're going to have a little bit of trouble in the run game with Saquon. I think Wink knows how to defend Lamar better than anybody. I do think the Ravens are going to win, but I think it's going to be another Justin Tucker field goal at the end to win it. I'm taking the Ravens. I'm going to say Ravens 27, Giants 24.
Okay. I don't think it's going to come down to a field goal. I think the Ravens are the better team here. It's not going to be an easy win, but I think they will pull ahead and come out with it. I don't think I think the X factor for this game, honestly, is the Ravens letting J.K. Dobbins do his thing. The Giants do not have a good run defense. I think the Ravens can exploit that. I think Lamar's going to have a good game. I've got the Ravens, and I'm going to go a little bold here. Scorigami.
Okay.
36-23.
That's never happened?
Never happened.
36-23 has never happened.
36-23 has
How
never
is that
happened.
possible?
I don't know.
Wow.
But it's never happened.
36-23.
36-23 Ravens on Sunday. You heard it here first.
So the Nerds have the Ravens as a top 5 team, despite the 2 losses.
They've trailed for like 2 minutes all season.
Yeah, and like 14 seconds in their losses.
Yeah.
So the Nerds think that this is a really good football team. I think they show it against the Giants. The last I checked, the Ravens were a 5.5-point favorite on the road. That's a big number on the road. I think the Ravens cover it. And I'm trying to think of I don't have a scorigami for you. I'll go Ravens 26, Giants 18.
26-18. Ravens 5, Giants 2. Right, 2 safeties. One thing I will say about J.K. Dobbins, I think his workload is going to increase, but I don't think it's this week because they're playing on that turf. In the Meadowlands, and there have been numerous complaints from the Players Association about that turf. You saw Kyle Fuller and Jawan James suffer season-ending injuries in Week 1 against the Jets. I think they're going to want to protect their players as best they can while still playing a competitive football game.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that.
Yeah,
but Kenyon Drake averaged 6.5 yards a carry his last time out.
Yes,
so
he did.
I could see him contributing as well.
And then and you mentioned the Ravens are a good football. The Nerds think that they're a good football team. They're a good football team that in the next couple of weeks you're going to get Gus Edwards, David Ajabo, and Tyus Bowser back. So they're
Cavalry is coming.
Yeah, they could take off here. And they've got an easy schedule coming up here too. So could be a nice little run here for the Ravens, assuming health. That's a big knock on wood. Special thanks to Stan the Fan Charles for his weekly segment. Thank you so much to Luke Jackson. One of the more fun shows that we've done. Want to do this more often with you, Luke. So thanks for coming in and doing this with us. Another special thanks to Ryan Blake, my co-host from the Give That Fan a Podcast.
Yeah, can we plug that real quick?
Yeah, cool? Absolutely. We got an episode coming up this week, right?
Yeah, we'll figure out our schedule. So we want to come up with a little a more regimented schedule because we've been kind of switching it up week to week. But you can find us probably bi-weekly in the off season, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
You can find all of our episodes on Utah Street Report. We're also live on YouTube every episode, live on Twitter at Orioles Fan Probs with a Z. You can listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely. Tune in. We've had some great guests, whether it was Ryan Ripken or Mike Bordick, some great guests, or Eric Arditi on the show. And we're going to keep doing that throughout the off season. It's going to be an interesting one, so tune in there. Tune in here. Catch Ryan and I on the Locked on Orioles podcast from this past week, from this past Thursday and Friday, if you want to check that out. And, of course, tune into all of our programming at PressBoxOnline.com. We will see you next week. Zach will be back. I'll be in my right seat and not have to worry about all of this over here.